Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to Let's Start Story on What If Harry Had Marriage with Narcissa Forcefully. So do 4 blue hearts comment, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video, and please share with your friends and watch till end. Also check out Patreon, for I have upload Harry x Hermione uncensored spicy version, link in description. There were people everywhere. Dresses of every color swirled before him, and the sounds of music and laughter filled his ears. 3 years ago tonight, the Great Hall hadn't looked like this. That night had been dark, cursed, and in the end, silent. A million things had changed since then, but a million other things had stayed the same. Harry Potter was still there, standing at the bar for the moment, but not for long. His eyes swept around the room as he pretended to be listening to whatever Ginny had been saying. His gaze stopped when he reached the large oak doors. The pair stood framed in the towering archway as whispers and stares found them. Neither one of them was entirely sure why they had come, but they had received the invitation and never once to refuse a social outing they had obliged. People looked at them with distrust and loathing, and neither man nor woman could find a fault in it. They were deserving of the stares, of the whispers and the scowls. Or at least that is what they had thought. A smile tugged at the corners of Harry's mouth as he looked at them. He was shocked, but pleased that they had accepted the invitation he had made sure was sent their way. What better way to reintroduce them into society than at the largest party of the year? Without so much as a word to Ginny, he pulled away from her and made his way across the room towards the door. Intent upon rescuing them from the stares and the whispers, well intent on rescuing her, Draco he couldn't really care less about. When he arrived in front of her, he gave her a slight bow and extended his hand. A waltz started behind him and he smiled down at her. Ms. Black, may I have this dance? She looked up at him, curiosity filling her icy blue eyes. Lord Potter. She addressed him using the title that he had gained after the war. One he wasn't used to people using. There is no need to extend such courtesies towards me. I know that my being here is not something that everyone is going to accept. No need to ostracize yourself from your friends on my account. She gave a small wave of her hand, as if to dismiss him, but he caught a hold of it and held her gaze. Narcissa. Her eyes widened at his use of her given name. But he didn't let her interrupt. You have every right to be here tonight. Without you, I wouldn't have been here. I would have died out there in that forest. You helped save everyone here. You deserve to be among them. Potter, if my mother says no, she means it. Back off. Draco started to take a step towards Harry, but Narcissa got in the way. Go enjoy yourself, darling. Harry is fine, in fact. She turned back to the dark-haired young man. I will accept your offer to dance. He smiled as Draco huffed off in the opposite direction, and he moved her hand to his arm. He escorted her to the dance floor. The whispers and stares that had followed her since she set foot in the castle seemed only to multiply when people noticed that Harry had taken it upon himself to escort her. There were audible gasps and loud whispers carried to their ears as they began to waltz around the dance floor. Who does she think she is? Why is she even here? Wife of a Death Eater. Fewer revolved around Harry, but some of those cut through to the dance partners as well. What is he doing? Did he invite her? Potter and Lady Malfoy are waltzing. Strange. When the song ended, she pulled away from him and barely met his eyes as she dropped him a shallow curtsy before turning from the dance floor. Slowly he made his way back over to Ginny, who had not moved the entire time that Harry had spent with Narcissa. What was that all about? To the casual observer her voice sounded light and easy, simply curious. To Harry it was bitter, like she couldn't quite believe that had just happened. I owe her, Gin. Owe her. You owe Narcissa Malfoy. It's Black again now, and yes, I owe her. What could you possibly owe her? His expression turned serious and he met her yes, for the first time since he had come back to the bar. I owe her my life. He heard her gasp as he walked away from her and slowly wandered through the party. He had never told anyone what she had done for him in the forest. And he assumed that she hadn't either. It was a secret that neither one of them felt the need to share, but it connected them. In a way that neither one ever hoped to be connected to another. He moved around the room, talking and laughing with everyone that he was expected to. He joked with the Weasleys, and pecked Hermione on the cheek. He tickled both Teddy and Victory when he reached the table they sat at with Andromeda and Fleur. Both toddlers brought a smile to Harry's face. At 2 and 3 it was nice to see that there was a bright future ahead of them. As he circled the massive hall, he found himself searching for her, watching her. Her blonde hair made her easily distinguishable, even from a distance. He was glad to see that not everyone was whispering and pushing her to the side. From his spot along one wall, he could see that she was talking to the minister and to McGonagall. They were smiling and it seemed that she was getting along fine. "You're staring, Potter." He was shaken by the snarky drawl. "She's going to notice and I doubt that she will appreciate the fact that you are checking up on her." "I'm not checking up on her. I was just making sure she was okay." "She's fine, Potter. Don't you have a girlfriend you should be watching out for, instead of silently stalking my mother?" "It's not stalking to make sure that she's having a good time. And as far as Ginny is concerned, I think she's doing just fine on her own." He nodded to the bar where he had left her and Malfoy turned to look over his shoulder. "She's flirting with Zabby. And you're over here not even trying to stop it. Finally realized you can do better than that, huh? There's nothing wrong with Ginny, it's not the same, now that I'm not facing death every day. You're an Auror. Not exactly the safest job there is. Still a lot safer than I used to be. I think the thrill of it was a part of the draw for us. The knowing there was a real chance that I wouldn't come back. Now that I'm here." He seemed to realize what he was saying and whom he was saying it to, and he stopped suddenly. "What am I telling you any of this for anyhow? You'd be surprised, Potter. We Slytherins make very good listeners." He smiled and retreated back the way that he had come. Harry sighed and moved around the room giving his goodbyes as he went. There was no use in trying to say goodbye to everyone. Just those he was sure would feel offended if he didn't. When he reached the little trio, he gently touched her elbow as he cleared his throat. "I just wanted to offer my goodbyes." He extended a hand to Kingsley, Minister, Professor. He shook McGonagall's hand in turn and finally he faced Narcissa. "Ms. Black." He took her hand and kissed her knuckles. "Lord Potter. Thank you for the dance earlier. I apologize for the way I behaved afterwards." He smiled at her as he backed away, green eyes dancing with his every syllable. "It was my pleasure." By the time he made it back over to Ginny, she was alone again. "I gave everyone our goodbyes. We are free to leave whenever you would like." "Well, then I'm ready. There is no reason to be here at all." He could feel the fight coming and he didn't want to have it in public. That went against his belief in privacy when it came to his personal life. He took her arm in his and led her to the fireplace that had been set up for everyone to come and go for the evening. Stepping into it, he sighed as she disappeared from sight. He came out in the kitchen of Grimmauld Place, and seconds later he heard Ginny come spinning in behind him. "This isn't over, Harry. I want to talk about this." "Talk about what, Gin?" Tonight. You left me by myself at a ball while you danced with someone else and then proceeded to travel around the room alone. Talking to absolutely everyone except me." He had kept a cap on his temper up until this point, but it was wearing thin. "I asked you to dance, Ginny, more than once before Narcissa and Draco got there. You turned me down. I'm sorry that I asked someone else. And as far as leaving you at that bar, you knew everyone there, you could have made conversation with anyone, in fact you did. I saw you talking to Blaise Zabini, so don't act like you were alone all night because of me. You are an adult, you can take care of yourself." He could see the tears welling up in her eyes. And he honestly didn't want to hurt her. "You know what, forget it. Now is not the time to talk about this. Not when we are both angry. Tomorrow when we've cooled down a bit we can talk. Until then, I'm going to bed." He headed for the door and stopped when he heard the fire whoosh back to life behind him. "Good night, Harry." She gave a small smile and then stepped back into the fire calling out, "The burrow." Harry laid awake for hours turning it all over in his mind. There was so much to think about, so much to consider. He had spent the last 3 years of his life with Ginny. Is this really all it came down to? One lousy fight and they were going their separate ways. He tried to think of all the things that may have gone wrong, all the ways he could fix it, but his mind kept drifting. The image in his mind kept shifting. The woman in front of him was changing. No longer was her hair straight and red, or her eyes a honey brown, instead there were long golden waves falling around her shoulders. And icy blue eyes that seemed to peer into his soul. Narcissa Black was invading his dreams. The next morning Harry awoke to the sound of Creature's voice calling for him. "What is it, Creature?" "The Weasley girl is in the kitchen, sir. She is wanting to know if you is having breakfast yet, sir." Tell her I'm on my way down. The elf bowed and with a loud pop he disappeared from Harry's room. It was a few minutes later that Harry arrived in the kitchen, fully dressed and ready for the day. His first thought when he looked at Ginny was that she had been crying. Her voice was soft, and he could hear the heartbreak in her words as she gave them, "Harry, we need to talk." He nodded and sat down across from her. He started buttering his toast, but then he set the knife down on the table and met her eyes. "This isn't working, Jin. I don't know what happened, but we aren't working anymore." He had expected the tears to start flowing again, but instead she just sighed. "I know. I don't know how to fix it anymore." She looked down at her lap where she was twirling her wand in her fingers. "I don't want to just give up, but it's gone." Her eyes shot back up to his and he saw she was surprised. "Yes." It was a whisper, but it was there. "I didn't know how to describe it, or what to say, but you're right, it's gone." Harry got up and came around her side of the table and pulled her up into a bone-crushing hug. "I'll always love you, Jin, it's just not the same anymore. It's like trying to fall in love with my sister." "Exactly. Hey. Well, it's like trying to love one of my brothers anyway." She looked up at him and smiled. "That's what we are, Harry, family. Nothing is going to change that, but I can't love you. And I don't want to love you like that anymore." He kissed the top of her head. "This feels right. I agree. I've missed you, Harry. I missed you too." When she left again this time it felt right. They had done the right thing. They were better as friends, as siblings, than they ever had been as lovers. Now when he shut his eyes the woman in his head didn't even start off with red hair, now she was blonde. No matter how old he got, or what else was going on in the world. Somehow, some way, every year since the war, on his birthday the prophet managed to work it in, and every year he was bombarded with owls. Well wishes and birthday cards rained down on him from all around, and yet this year he had never felt lonelier. Ron and Hermione were both busy at the ministry, working in their respective fields, and though Molly had fared to make dinner he didn't feel like going to the Weasleys alone. Even though the breakup with Ginny had been mutual, he still wasn't as comfortable there as he had been before. So here he sat, alone, in a bar, on the night before his 21st birthday sipping fire whiskey and wishing more than anything that he had somebody to talk to. Wishing that he didn't have to be alone anymore. He had tried to go out on dates. To act like someone his own age for a change, but it was difficult. The girls he dated were just that, girls. They wanted the glitz and glam of dating someone famous, and Harry didn't want to be famous. He wanted to be Harry. He looked once more around the bar as he spun the stool he was sitting on. Out of the corner of his eye he saw it. That unmistakable glimpse of blonde hair. He set his glass back on the counter and steadied himself. He knew that he had been seeing her in his dreams for months, but he wasn't dreaming right now. Slowly he looked back over his shoulder and sure enough, there she was. Her hair covered her face, and if you didn't know it was her, Narcissa Black could have been anyone. Harry smiled to himself, and then he thought again. Was it presumptuous to just walk over there and join her? Could he get away with that? He glanced over his shoulder at her, debating on whether or not he was going to push his luck when she saw that her shoulders were shaking. Was Narcissa Black sitting alone in a bar, crying? He studied her for a moment more and he was sure, she really was crying. Well, there would be no crying on his birthday. He grabbed his glass and maneuvered his way through the room towards her. He came up behind her and so he coughed as he reached out to touch her shoulder. Trying his best not to startle her. His attempts were futile, for when his hand laid on her shoulder she jumped. "Forgive me, Ms. Black." He smiled down at her when her head whipped around so she could see who it was. "I noticed you were alone, and that you were crying. Is there anything I could do to help?" She tried to compose herself around her tears and plant a smile on her lips. "Lord Potter. No, thank you, I'm fine. Really it's silly, don't worry about it." There were still tears hanging on in her eyes and Harry wouldn't allow himself to be dismissed so easily. "Too late, I'm already worried." He pointed at the empty seat across from her. "May I join you?" She rolled her eyes, causing a tear to leak out, but she smiled. "I guess if you must." He set his glass on the table and threw his weight into the chair opposite her. A small grin was tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Will you tell me why you're crying?" She stiffened and then without meeting his eyes she shook her head. "Why not?" She didn't answer him, instead she CKED up her glass and swirled the amber liquid. Narcissa, he reached out and caught her hand and her eyes shot up to his, the look of fear on her face had him letting go instantly. I'm not going to hurt you, I just want to help. Why are you crying? It's July 30th. I know. His grin slipped back on his face. Tomorrow's my birthday. She peeked up at him. Happy birthday. Thanks. He shrugged. But you still haven't answered my question. I know. She reached into her cloak and pulled out a letter. One look at it and Harry knew instantly whom it was from. It's our anniversary. Or it would be if we were still married. I remember what he said to me last year, and I can't bring myself to open it. Another tear escaped down her cheek. I don't want to know, but at the same time I can't just throw it out. I spent half my life married to that man, and that doesn't just go away. Do you still love him? His question seemed to throw her off for a second, but she recovered quickly. No. Her eyes found his and she held his gaze as she answered, I haven't loved Lucius in a very long time. You could have fooled me. I saw you at that trial, you acted the perfect pureblood wife. NY1 would have thought he was the love of your life. Honestly, I'm not sure if I ever loved him. I love the idea of him, the idea of marrying into a prestigious pureblood line. As far as loving him, I don't know. The only person I know for sure that I loved after I was married is Draco. She smiled softly to herself. I love my son, and everything that I did for him. Harry reached out and held her hand in his on the tabletop. I understand. I've been saved by a mother's love a few times now. He smiled at her. Would you like me to open the letter? That way it gets done, but you didn't have to do it. No, thank you. She stood gracefully and swept the letter up off of the table. Harry watched her as she moved to the fireplace and with one last look at the envelope in her hands he cast it into the flames and returned to the table. Now it's gone. I asked for a divorce and I received one. I don't have to suffer anymore at his hand. Her weepiness was gone, replaced by the powerful and commanding presence he had long associated with her. Would you join me for another round, Harry? Green eyes met blue in the firelight and they both smiled. Why not? The rest of the night went by in a blur. They stayed until closing time telling each other stories. Narcissa told Harry about her family and her past and he told her the truth about his childhood and dispelled some of the more wicked rumors that were flying around. She put tears in his eyes telling him about Sirius and he made her gasp when he told what really happened between Draco and Buckbeak in their third year. He told him everything she could remember about his parents, and he told her how he saved her son from the room of requirement during the final battle. They spent the night laughing, and crying, and sharing. When they heard last call, Harry grabbed her hand and dragged her outside. He made sure he had a hold of her and then he apparated them to Grimmauld Place. They went stumbling through the hall before they collapsed on the couch in the library. The portrait of Walburga Black was annoyed at being disturbed and a very disgruntled creature popped in to check on them. When they had reassured both that they were fine, they went back to talking. He rummaged around and pulled out a picture of Teddy so that she could see him, and she longed for Andromeda, all the while missing Bellatrix. She told him about her childhood and her sisters and he told her about her niece and Regulus. They fell asleep in the library. Her stretched out on the chaise and he on the floor just in front of her. The next morning the sun slipped between the curtains on the large windows and a beam fell across her face, waking her with a start. She sat straight up and grabbed her head. Memories of the previous night flooded in and she smiled. She looked around the room, but she was alone. Harry was nowhere to be seen. Just then the door creaked open slowly and he came in holding a tray with toast and 2 bottles of hangover potion. She smiled and accepted what he offered her quietly. There was an air of embarrassment hanging over them. Neither one of them knew quite what to say to the other. Had there been less alcohol, they never would have shared everything that they had. Before things could get any more awkward, she stood and collected her cloak. I really should get home. Draco's bound to notice I didn't come home last night. That's going to be fun to explain. She chuckled as he started to follow her to the library door. I know how to get home, Harry. Thank you. She stopped just before she made it completely out of the room and turned back. Harry. He looked up at her over the paper he had just picked up. I just wanted to thank you. I never properly did. He smiled at her uncharacteristic shyness. Oh, it was my pleasure. He set the paper back down and moved to the doorway. I don't mean for last night. I meant for everything. The trials, the divorce, everything you did for Draco and I. He bent and brushed a kiss on her cheek. I know. It was my pleasure. I owe you my life, you saved me that night. She started to interrupt, but he held up a finger and continued speaking. If you will. Do really like to thank me, though there is something you could do. Oh, you could join me for dinner this evening. Oh, she looked shocked. Harry, is that a good idea? I mean, I'm old enough to be your mother. It's my birthday. I'm 21 years old today, but you and I both know that I'm far older than that. He brushed a stray piece of hair off of her forehead and tucked it behind her ear. Please, Narcissa. War has a way of aging people, of maturing them, and I'm asking. Would you please join me for dinner? She hesitated, but then she smiled, only because it's your birthday and you asked so nicely. He grinned and escorted her to the fireplace in the kitchen. I'll be there at 7. He brushed another kiss on her cheek. Goodbye, Narcissa. Bye, Harry. And in a whoosh of green flames she disappeared. Time seemed to crawl all day. Harry was nervous. What had he been thinking? Was this really the way to do this? Was he really going on a date with Narcissa Black? Did she think it was a date? He didn't sit still all day. There were too many things running through his mind. Narcissa wasn't much better. She was trying to figure out what she was doing. He was younger than her own son. Should she really be going on a date with him? Was it a date? Yes, it was. He had kissed her cheek, twice, that morning. There were thoughts of more than just a friendship on his mind. Could she really date Harry Potter? Why had he chosen her when he could have any woman in the world? She didn't deserve any of it. At 5 to 7 Harry headed out the front door and apparated to Malfoy Manor. He had told her 7. And there was no way he was going to be late. He knocked on the front door and a tiny house elf answered. Lord Potter. Mistress is finishing up upstairs. She is telling me to tell you to wait here for her. Thank you, Lottie, sir. Thank you, Lottie. The elf bowed and disappeared with a loud pop. The minutes ticked past and Harry's nerves were edging him closer and closer to insanity. Finally, the sound of heels on the marble floor caused him to look up. When he saw her, she took his breath away. She was dressed causily, and in Harry's opinion it made her even more beautiful. He had sent her an owl earlier telling her that he planned on taking them into Muggle London, and he was impressed with her choice of clothing. A dark pair of jeans and an emerald green, silk, short-sleeved blouse went perfectly with her silver stilettos and her diamond earrings. What shocked him most was that her normally elaborately styled hair was pulled up in a simple ponytail. Her bangs hung loose on her forehead and her face was almost completely free of makeup. Harry. She smiled when she reached him. Is this Muggle enough? He returned her smile with ease. You look perfect. Are you hungry? Starved. Good. He took her hand and pulled the heavy manor door open. Ms. Black. He gestured for her to go out ahead of him and he pulled the door closed behind him. Sissa. Huh. He looked down at her confused. My name Harry. She lifted her eyebrows at him. No more Ms. Black, it's Sissa. He chuckled. Well, okay then. Hold on, Sissa. He offered his arm and as she took it he spun them off to London. Dinner went well. There was enough history between the two of them that it was like skipping the first 5 or 6 dates. They were surprisingly comfortable around each other. By the time they arrived back at the manor, Harry was hooked. Even after 3 years, dinner with Ginny had never been so easy. He couldn't remember ever having that much fun, and he was all smiles. Narcissa felt the same way. The more she thought about, the more she realized that she had never actually been on a date like that. With Lucius, everything had been arranged since they were children. There had been no fun dates, no getting to know one another out in public, certainly no laughing, drinking and flirting in front of strangers. With Harry everything was different, and in this case different was exciting. He followed her into the foyer of the manor and he bent and kissed her knuckles like a proper gentleman. Good night, Sissa. She nodded and then scooted in and shed her blood-red lips against his cheek. Harry. She watched him head for the door, and just as she turned to climb up the stairs he turned back. Can I see you again? She gave him a full-blown smile and shook her head. I guess if you must. She turned away from him and she seemed to float up the rest of the stairs. He watched her go, and smiling to himself he headed for the door. As he reached for the handle, the whole thing swung open. Draco stood on the other side looking as though he was coming from a date of his own. Potter. What are you doing here? Leaving. And before he could get another word out, Harry stepped past him and disappeared with a soft pop. She closed the door behind her and she sunk to the ground, her back pressed against the wood. She couldn't remember ever having that much fun. Her eyes fell closed for just a second until she felt the door start to open against her back. She jumped to her feet and pulled it the rest of the way, only to find her son on the other side. Mother. He had a confused look on his face and she laughed. Yes. She looked around her. You came to my room, Draco. Other than the two of us there is no one else here. Who were you expecting? No. It's just that I saw Potter leaving, and I was just. He couldn't keep his eyes from wandering up and down her body. What are you wearing? She looked down at her muggle attire and her laughter increased. Don't you like it? Draco was stunned. Never had he seen his mother in such muggle clothes, and even if he had, it had been tight dresses and business suits. Never something as casual as this. Not to mention the laughter. In his 21 years he couldn't remember his mother ever laughing so freely. It's different. Why on earth are you? Then the reality of the situation hit him. Potter had been dressed in much the same manner as his mother. Did you go on a date with Harry Potter? He wasn't quite yelling, but Sissa still took a step backwards. She didn't give him an answer, but her small smile gave her away. You went on a date with someone younger than I am. And not just any someone, you went on a date with Harry Potter. She just grinned at him. Yes, I did. Is that a problem? Why? He couldn't seem to wrap his head around what was going on. Not only had his mother done something he would have never expected, she had then proceeded to straight up tell him that she had done it. Because he asked. She gave him a soft shove in the chest and pushed him completely out of her room, allowing her to shut the door gently and leave him standing completely flummoxed in hall. Her smile remained as she kicked off her heels and sat down in front of her mirror. As she got ready for bed she thought about her evening and just how perfect everything had turned out. Even the little chat with her son had gone better than she expected. She flopped down on her bed and relaxed. It had been a night to remember. When she woke up the next morning she was still wearing her jeans and her silk blouse. But that wasn't what startled her. Standing on her vanity was a vase of beautiful, yellow daffodils. She made her way over to them and pulled out the card that was tucked neatly between the petals. Sissa, thank you for an amazing birthday. Harry. 2 days went by without a word to each other, and as Saturday rolled around Harry made his weekly trip out to see Andromeda and Teddy. Ever since the ball he had made a habit of coming around more often. Ginny had never been very comfortable around the toddler, and now that he was alone it was easier to make the time. Just like every week at 9 o'clock the front door opened and in walked Harry. A smile on his face and some treat or toy for his godson in his pocket. This week was no exception. Andromeda had become a great friend for the young man, and Teddy was the closest thing to family he had left. There was a bond between them that was irreplaceable. Harry had been coming to her house every weekend for 3 months. And when he walked in that day she knew that something had changed. There was a lightness about him, an air of frivolity and joy that she hadn't seen in him before. Someone had touched Harry Potter's heart. And she was going to try and find out whom. For his part Harry pecked Andromeda on the cheek and hurried upstairs to say hello to Teddy. The boy always had something that he wanted to show him. Or some new toy that he wanted Harry to play with, and he wasn't ready to face her yet. He knew that she would be able to tell that something was different. She was a Slytherin after all. And an unusually perceptive one at that. He avoided her for as long as he thought he could get away with it. When he finally decided that he would head back downstairs and face her he was startled to see that she was standing in the doorway watching them play. As he got to his feet she held out the mug she was holding. And when he took it from her she didn't say a word, instead she turned and headed back for the kitchen. Just as silently he followed her, carrying his cup of coffee and knowing that he was in for a lecture. When he entered her kitchen she was leaning against the counter waiting for him. He put his head down and sat in the chair that she had purposely left pulled out for him. Well, her gaze was piercing, and with her dark eyes trained directly on him, Harry was reminded suddenly of Bellatrix. It had been years since he had looked at Andromeda and seen her sister, but there was something about her in that moment that reminded him she was indeed one of the notorious Black Sisters. Well, oh no, don't you give me that, Harry Potter, something is most definitely different about you. He wouldn't meet her eyes and he shook his head. There's nothing different. I'm still the same old me. She scrunched her eyes and nose and looked at him hard, as if she was trying to see what was hidden just under the surface. There is too. I just can't seem to put my finger on what it is. She pushed off of the counter and sat down across from him. You're lighter than you have been in a while. You seem happier. She grinned when she finally realized what she was seeing. Who is she? Harry's head shot up just a little too fast and Andromeda laughed. I knew it. Something has most definitely changed. I have known you for 4 years, young man, and never have I seen you like this. Whoever she is, she may just be the one. His eyes glazed over for a second as she watched him think. He quickly shook his head and focused on the woman in front of him. It's too early for that. It's only been one date. Her eyes went wide. One date and you've changed this much. What did she do to you? That's just it, she didn't do anything. I haven't even given her a proper kiss, only her cheek and her knuckles. I don't know what it is, something just feels right. Are you going to tell me who this girl is? He couldn't hold her gaze any longer. It was hard enough to not tell her. And he didn't want to give himself away. She was far too clever, there was a good chance she would see the guilt in his eyes. Not yet. I don't want to ruin anything. Telling me would ruin it. His salvation came in the form of a 3-year-old running in from upstairs. Unka Ari, come back and play. He crawled up in his lap and looked very seriously across the table at Andromeda. Gamma, can Unka Ari come back upstairs and play? He gave her his big puppy dog eyes and she laughed. Sure baby. Go on. He will be right behind you. Teddy bailed off of Harry's lap and ran for the stairs. Don't run, she called after him. She was shaking her head when she turned back to the dark-haired young man sitting across from her. We are not finished with this. He chuckled. I didn't think we were. He spent the better part of the next hour playing with his godson, and when he looked down at his watch he was surprised to see that it was almost noon. He bent and scooped the boy up, carrying him downstairs with him to where Andromeda was reading in the living room. He planted a kiss on the boy's head and then a quick one on Andromeda's cheek as he handed her Teddy. I have to go. I will see you both next week. He ruffled Teddy's hair, which had turned the same messy black that his was. Be good for Grandma. Bye Unka Ari. The toddler smiled up at him from Andromeda's lap. He was almost to the door before he heard her speak. Goodbye Mr. Potter. Don't you dare think you have gotten out of the rest of this conversation. Her words were harsh, but her laughter lessened their blow. Harry shook his head as he left the house and headed for home. When he got back to Grimmauld Place he sighed. It had been since Thursday that he had even spoken to Narcissa. He decided that he had waited long enough. As he walked into the kitchen he called out, Creature. In an instant the elf had appeared at his side. Yes Master Harry. He was moving about the kitchen making something simple to eat. Can you deliver a message for me? Of course sir. Is Master wanting to write it down, or have Creature remember it? You can just remember it. Would you please travel to Ma. LFOY Manor and ask Mistress Black if she would care to join me for dinner? Of course Master. The elf bowed and prepared to leave. Creature. If she accepts would you please ask her to arrive here at 7? The elf bowed once more and with a rather loud crack he was gone. Harry paced the living room with the sandwich that he had made. He was getting anxious the longer the elf was gone. Though it seemed like much longer. The elf reappeared less than 3 minutes later. He smiled his rather toothy smile up at Harry. Mistress Black says that would be lovely and that she will see you this evening. Harry gave a noticeable sigh and the elf chuckled to himself. Master. Yes Creature. Would you like Creature to prepare one of Mistress Black's favorites for dinner? Harry looked at him curiously. You know Sis's favorite foods. Quote. Creature has worked for the Blacks his whole life. As long as her favorites are still the same as when she was a young girl Creature knows them sir. Harry nodded. That would be good then, yeah. Thanks Creature. The elf just bowed and shooed the young man out of his kitchen. As the afternoon wore on and the hours dragged by Harry started to get more and more nervous about the evening. He hadn't suggested a dress code this time and he was worried that whatever he wore he would look underdressed next to her. By the time he settled on something it was edging close to the 7 o'clock hour and he hadn't even looked at the dining room. To his surprise he found it perfectly set when he arrived. Everything was ready to go, now all he had to do was wait for her arrival. Just as the clock struck 7 the fireplace sprung to life with bright green flames. Harry's arms encircled her waist as she tripped on the edge of the hearth. Her laughter was contagious and soon they were both standing in the middle of the kitchen trying to catch their breath. "Well," she said between breaths, "that's one way to start off the evening." He chuckled, "You do know how to make an entrance. I'm just lucky that you have such quick reflexes." "Well, I was a seeker." She pushed playfully at his chest and he let her go. "Now that we have started off our evening on this high note, can I interest you in something to eat?" Her eyes sparkled when she looked up at him and she nodded. He offered her his arm and they headed up the small flight of the stairs out of the kitchen towards the dining room. When they got there and she saw what he was serving her, she smiled. "How did you know?" "Know what?" She raised the platter in front of her, "That these are my favorite." "Ah, I didn't. You may want to thank Creature for that." She chuckled and called out, "Creature." The elf instantly popped up at her elbow. "Mistress Black, I just wanted to thank you." She nodded towards the table. "Harry said this was all you're doing." "Yes, mistress. I appreciate it." The elf bowed and disappeared from their sight once more. Dinner was more intimate than they had had before. There was nothing else to distract them when they were at home. Here it was just them, their first real chance to interact with just each other. By the time Creature brought out dessert, Narcissa's smile seemed like a permanent feature on her face, and the light that Andromeda had seen in Harry's eyes earlier in the day seemed to only glow brighter. They retired to the library, and Narcissa surprised Harry by sitting down on the couch next to him and leaning against him as they continued to talk. She was relaxed and comfortable, something that Harry cherished. Before they knew it, they were both growing tired and she stifled a yawn in the middle of her sentence. "I'm sorry." She looked up at him, "I really should get going, it's getting late." "Yeah, we wouldn't want Draco to be missing you. Actually." About that, she leaned away from him with a slight wince on her face. "What?" It was a cautious question. "What happened?" "He ran into you the other night, and he came up to my room." "Well." He put the pieces together and he realized that we had been out together. "Oh." She laughed, "Don't worry, he took it better than I thought he would." He met her eyes and seemed to hold her gaze as he leaned towards her slowly. "Good." He breathed as his lips pressed squarely to hers for the first time. As her lips parted and she made to kiss him back, the door behind them flew open. The couple sprang apart at the sound, both turning to look at the intruder, and both equally shocked to see who it was. "Mother." Draco's cracked whisper carried through the room, and to Narcissa it would have been easier if he had shouted, "Mother, how could you?" "Draco." She pulled herself off of the couch and approached her son. "What are you doing here?" "I was looking for you and Lottie said that you had come here for dinner. I knew that you had gone out with him the other night, but it's late and you didn't come home, and I walk in and you're all wrapped up in his arms." He ran a hand down his face. "What is going on, Mother? You asked why I went to dinner with Harry the other night, and I told you it was because he asked. That was only half of the truth, the other half of it is because I wanted to. Do you know how long I fought myself over this? How long I went back and forth trying to decide whether or not I was going to go through with it? Because you were right the other night, he is your age. And that was the first thing I said to him when he asked, but it turns out that it doesn't matter." She laughed quietly. "I don't care, Draco, for the first time in my life I am truly happy, can't you just let me have that?" Quote. He looked at her like she had lost her mind, he couldn't believe what he was hearing. His gaze shifted back and forth from her to the dark-haired hero sitting behind her. Ever so slowly he nodded. "You're happy?" "Yes. Because of him." He pointed at Harry. She smiled weakly and nodded. "Yes." She looked over her shoulder and met his eyes and he smiled back at her. When she turned back to Draco she sighed, "I will be right back, try and be civil at least." "Yes, Mother." His eyes never left Harry as he answered her and she slipped around him out of the room. When she was gone Harry stood up to face him. "What the hell, Potter? That is my mother you were making out with." It hadn't quite gone that far. "That was our first kiss." Harry's hand snuck up behind him and he rubbed the back of his neck nervously. "I just interrupted your first kiss. That sure as hell didn't look like a first kiss. It looked like you were getting ready to stick your tongue down her throat." He shook his head disgusted at the thought. "What the hell are you doing, Potter? I like her, Malfoy, she's great. Do you even know anything about her? I mean besides the fact that she's your mother. Do you know anything about her as a person? It's been 2 dates and I can't get her out of my head." I haven't been able to since that night at the ball. Malfoy pulled his wand from his sleeve and pointed it at Harry. I knew something was going on when you watched her the entire night. How dare you? She's my mother. I know more about her than you ever will. Harry ducked as a jet of blue sparks flew just to the right of his ear. He grabbed his own wand from the table behind him and cast a shield in front of himself. He knew better than to fight back, no matter how much satisfaction it would bring him. It would only hurt Narcissa. No, you don't, Malfoy. You may think you know her, but you know the mask. The front she puts up for the world. You don't know the sweet, funny, terrified woman behind it. My mother is not terrified. This time it was a stream of purple magic that hit the shield in front of him. At the same moment Narcissa reappeared in the doorway. Draco. I said civil. This is not civil. She tried to move around in front of him, but he circled so that she was never in harm's way. When he didn't listen, she grew frustrated. She looked over to Harry and for a brief moment she breathed a sigh of relief. He hadn't been fighting back, instead he was simply deflecting everything that Draco was sending his way. Another shot of magic burst from Draco's wand, and this time the light was red. Without thinking, Narcissa jumped, and when she hit the ground between them they both lurched back, startled. Instead of a petite, blonde woman, a large, tawny lioness was standing between them. Draco let out a startled cry, but Harry took a step forward. Narcissa. The lioness turned to look at him, and he was met with a very familiar pair of icy, blue eyes. He crouched down next to her and gently reached out his hand. She nudged it with her head and then stepped back, shifting once more into her human form. She smiled at him from her knees and laughed at the look on both of their faces. Draco was the first to recover. Mother. I didn't know you were an animagus. She nodded. Since I was 16 years old. I started learning the process the day after Andromeda left. I had to protect myself. Little did I know that I was going to become this. Harry's laughter caused them both to turn and face him. What's so funny, Potter? Draco sneered in his direction. He got to his feet and bent and scooped Narcissa up into a hug. A lioness. The icy, Queen of Slytherin, is in fact a lioness. He set her down and looked over her shoulder straight at Draco. Even you have to admit it's ironic, Malfoy. The Slytherin looked at him hard for a second, and then his gaze shifted to his mother, who was still standing with Harry's arms around her waist. His own icy mask teared for a second as he cracked a smile. It is. Really, Mother? You couldn't have been something else, a swan maybe, or fox. Even a leopard would have been better than a lion. A funny look crossed his face and he shook his head. I have this fuzzy memory of a lioness standing guard over my crib when I was little. I always thought it was a dream. He looked across at her and he was surprised to see that while she was smiling there were tears shining in her eyes. Mother, are you crying? She batted a hand across her cheek to wipe away the tears and she shook her head. No, not at all. I just didn't realize that you remembered that. Why didn't you say anything? I thought it was a dream. How was I supposed to know that it was you? He has a point. She slapped playfully at Harry's chest, but he kept going. How was he supposed to know that you illegally turned into a large cat and then watched over him while he slept? He laughed. It's rather creepy. It was not creepy. And besides, I didn't do it every night, only when. She cut herself off before she said anything else. He looked down at her curiously and Draco took a step closer to the pair. Only when I wanted to make sure you were safe. She stepped away from Harry and laid a hand on her son's cheek. Safe from what? She didn't answer him, and she stepped away and headed for the sofa in front of the fireplace. She waved her wand over the pot of coffee and reheated it, pouring herself a cup. Safe from what, Mother? Draco took a step towards her, but was stopped by Harry's hand on his arm. When he looked up he was angry. But the expression on Harry's face sobered him. He raised his eyebrows questioningly, but Harry only shook his head. It wasn't his place to tell him, but he didn't want him to upset Narcissa. When Harry let go, Draco moved to sit next to his mother. What else don't I know, Mom? What aren't you telling me? Her gaze was fixed on the fire dancing in the grate, and so he reached towards her in an attempt to make her look at him. She pulled away suddenly, as if she thought he was going to hit her, and when she turned to face him there was fear in her eyes. Mom. His voice was hurt and confused. Are you all right? She gave a weak smile and nodded. Yes, I'm fine. I just got stuck in the past for a moment. Don't worry about it, please. He looked at her with new eyes, seeing or the first time what Harry had been talking about. Seeing that there really was a whole person inside of her that he didn't know anything about. Please, what were you protecting me from? She sighed and her hand found his cheek again. So many things. She tried to smile, but he wasn't buying it. At first it was the Dark Lord, when you were an infant and he would come to the manor to see your father. I would shift and wait in your room. I didn't want him anywhere near you. Then, there were others, after he disappeared there were others. On occasion it was even Bella, or your father that I was protecting you from. You were my baby, I wouldn't let anything happen to you. Why didn't you tell me? When I got older, why didn't you say anything? You have always tried to protect me, when did you stop showing me the lion? After the first time you mentioned it to your father. Draco gasped, but she kept going. He didn't know what you were talking about, and when the lion never showed up in your bedroom he became angry. He yelled at me, and then he left. I remember I snuck out of bed and followed him down the hall to your room. I heard him yelling at you that you shouldn't tell me wild stories. That I would be weak. I shouldn't live in a fantasy. He pulled her into a hug. I'm so sorry. You were only trying to protect me. That's all right. You were tiny, you didn't know what would happen when you told Lucius. It's not your fault. He pulled away from her and stood up. It's not yours either. He turned to Harry and moved back across the room to him. I'm sorry. He extended his hand and Harry took it. I still don't like this, but if she says you make her happy then I'm going to have to learn to live with it. Harry chuckled, thanks Draco. His eyebrows shot up when Harry used his first name. But he just nodded. He smiled at them both and headed for the door. When he got there he turned back around. Harry. The dark-haired young man looked up. If you ever hurt her, you will answer to me. When he saw him nod he smiled and with a quick wave he left them alone once again. When Draco finally left Harry made his way over to the couch and sat down next to her. Hey. She leaned against him and rested her head on his shoulder. Hey. Are you okay? That was a lot. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. He seemed okay though, when he left. Like he might not hate me as much. Her laughter filled the air around them. I don't think you're going to get quite that lucky. He may not hate you, but it's going to take more effort than that to get him to like you. All settled for acceptance. His laughter joined hers for a moment, before he broke off all the noise when he caught her lips in a kiss. When they pulled away he grinned. I just wanted to finish what I started. Well, I'm glad. Thank you by the way. For what? For not fighting back. When he was trying to curse you, you weren't firing curses back. He shrugged. I figured you'd just get upset. I didn't know you were going to jump in the middle like that. Neither did I. An unregistered animagus, huh? Who would have thought that when you first changed at 16 you would actually end up a cougar? She shoved away from him suddenly. Harry Potter. What? He laughed, his hands in the air as she waylaid his chest. I am not a cougar. He cocked an eyebrow at her. I'm not. I'm a lioness and you know it. Uh-huh. Whatever you say. You listen to me, Harry Potter. She had stood up from the couch and for as short as she was she seemed to tower over his as she pointed a finger at his chest. I may be a Slytherin, and a black, but I have standards, and being a cougar isn't one of them. She was so serious in her lecturing that he couldn't help but laugh at her. He reached up and grabbed her waist, pulling her down to him. Whatever you say, my dear. Her serious expression relaxed as she tumbled onto his lap. Pet names. Really? He gave her another kiss as his laughter continued and he settled further back into the couch. Well, you're the one that can turn into a rather large cat. Weeks went by and they spent their time getting to know one another, each learning everything they could about the other, sharing more than either one of them had ever shared with anyone else. It was early one Saturday morning in late September that Harry woke up with her head on his chest. And he felt an overwhelming urge not to leave her behind. Most days they spent the majority of their time apart, and got together around dinner time, alternating between spending the night at Grimmauld Place and the manor. Harry worked during the week, and Sissa spent her days reconnecting with some of the charity groups and other volunteer programs that she had worked with before the war. Many of which were more than happy to take her, and her money, back into their good graces. This particular morning though, as he watched her sleep so peacefully, he didn't want to spend the day apart. They had been together almost 2 months now, and aside from Draco knowing, their entire relationship was still a secret. He ran his hand over her golden waves as he smiled to himself. Maybe it was time to try telling a couple more people, and he knew just who was next on the list. What are you thinking about? He looked back down as she shifted so that she could look in his eyes. You're thinking about something. What is it? I was just thinking about today. I want you to come with me. She pushed up so that she was hovering above him, her hair tumbling down like a curtain around them both. Come with you. To Andromeda's. Harry, I haven't spoken to my sister in 20 years. He reached up and tucked her hair behind her ear. I know. I think it's time. Besides, it's Saturday. I'm going to see Teddy anyway. We aren't making a special trip. I'm just bringing my girlfriend with me to meet my godson. She sat up properly so that he could sit as well. Is that a good idea? What if she throws us both out and won't let you see Teddy? I don't want to be the reason you lose him. Hey, he took hold of her shoulders and made her look at him. You are not going to be the reason I lose anything. You are the reason I have gained so much, and today I am going to give you your sister back. You can't know that she will take me back. Trust me, she misses you more than you think. I'm pretty sure she will be pissed at first, but by the time we leave she will be glad you came. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. All right, I'll go. She leaned over and gave him a kiss before climbing out of the bed and sashaying her hips to the bathroom. She threw a sly smile over her shoulder at him as he watched her go. It's already 7:30. If we want to get there by n, you are more than welcome to share the shower with me. She laughed as he scrambled out of the bed after her. 45 minutes later they finally made it downstairs to the kitchen to grab something for breakfast. Sissa was still having doubts about whether or not she should go with him to Andromeda's. Are you sure this is a good idea? He rolled his eyes behind her back. Sissa. Don't Sissa me. She pointed a spoon at him. But dressed only in his old Quidtic jersey, with a tiny grin playing on her lips, she was the opposite of threatening. I'm serious. What if this ends badly? He stepped up and wrapped his arms around her. And what if it ends with you reuniting with your sister and gaining a nephew in the process? He's already my nephew. Well, great nephew anyway. And yet you've never met him. Come on. Trust me. It'll be great. He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. I promise. She laid her head on his chest and for the second time that morning she took a deep breath. He felt her nod and he smiled. Teddy is going to love you. A few minutes before 9 he took her hand in his and together they headed out the door. He tucked her hand neatly into his elbow and gave her a long, slow kiss before he pulled back and grinned. Are you ready? She returned his smile weakly and nodded, as I'll ever be. Let's go. He chuckled as he turned on the spot and apparated them into Andromeda's neighborhood. When they reached the front gate Harry pushed it open and held it as Sissa stepped in the garden in front of him. He wrapped his arm around her waist when he caught up to her and they headed for the front door. Just like every week Harry didn't bother knocking, instead he simply opened the door and let himself inside, pulling her along behind him. Andromeda. He called her name as he headed for the kitchen, the most likely place to find her this early in the day. Hey, anybody home? Unca Harry. Teddy came running out of the kitchen towards them as they made their way down the hall. Harry scooped him up into his arms and tickled him. The boy stopped mid-laugh when he saw Narcissa over Harry's shoulder. Who dat? He pointed at her with a curious expression on his face. Harry turned so that they were both facing the woman behind him. That's your Aunt Sissa. She wanted to meet you. The toddler studied her thoroughly for a moment and then much to her surprise his features began to shift and change. His dark curls becoming straight and blonde and his green eyes shifting to match her icy blue ones. He turned to Harry with a big smile on his face. I look like Aunt Issa. He laughed at the expression on Narcissa's face and looked down at his godson. Yeah buddy, you look just like Aunt Sissa. He snuck a peek back up at her and grinned. He's a metamorphagus. He has amazing control over it for such a young age. She was smiling at the boy and hardly even looking at Harry. Nymphadora did too if my memory serves me correctly. She as the child wiggled his way down Harry's body and took off running back to the kitchen. They followed close behind him and heard Andromeda's shocked gasp when she saw the tiny, blonde boy running towards her. Gamma, I look like Aunt Issa. When Harry entered the kitchen Andromeda looked up. Harry, what's going on? Aunt Issa. He looks like, words failed her when she saw who came in behind him. She opened and closed her mouth but nothing came out. Like me. Hello Andy. Sissa. She closed her eyes and shook her head. When she opened them again she looked at the two of them. What are you doing here? Narcissa opened her mouth to answer, but Harry spoke over the top of her. I brought her here. I wanted her to meet Teddy, and I wanted her to see you. What do you mean you brought her here? Why are you taking her anywhere? She scooped up her grandson who looked so much like her sister. Realization hit her. No. She looked back and forth between them. Harry, no. Tell me it's not her. The woman that you have been talking about for the last 2 months is my little sister. His arm snuck around Sissa's waist and he pulled her into him as he addressed the brunette. Andromeda, please, just hear me out. She started shaking her head but he kept on talking. No, listen. You don't understand. Everything is different now. She's different. Please, don't turn her out. I think the two of you need to talk. He stepped away from Sissa and took Teddy from his grandmother. Come on little man, let's us boys go and play. As soon as they had cleared the room Andromeda took a deep breath. What do you want Sissa? Why are you here after all this time? Honestly, I think that I'm due a little honesty from you, so yeah honestly. She looked across the room at her little sister, internally fighting the urge to wrap her in her arms and never let go. Harry asked me to come with him. I didn't want to. I didn't think that you would want me here, and I didn't want you to turn Harry away because of me. She looked in the direction that the boys had gone and her smile crept back to her lips. He loves that boy more than anything, and I wouldn't have been able to stand it if you had taken him away from him because of me. I wouldn't dream of it. Teddy loves Harry and more than anything he needs that sort of father figure in his life. I think they are good for each other. Sissa noticeably relaxed at that and her smile widened. It looks like Teddy might not be the only one having an effect on Harry though. Light eyes shot up to meet her sister's dark ones. What's that supposed to mean? Andromeda shook her head and gave a small laugh, only that he's changed over the course of the past couple months. Did he tell you that he told me about you after your first date? Of course he didn't tell me that it was you. Only that even after one night something just felt right to him. She couldn't help but smile at the expression on Sissa's face. You felt the same way didn't you? The blonde nodded. I did. I fought it originally. This wasn't the direction I ever thought my life would go, but there is something about him. I don't know what it is, but I've never felt this way before. This time a full laugh escaped the older sister's lips. Sweetie, you're falling in love with him. Sissa shook her head and looked at her lap. No, I can't, it's only been 2 months. How could I possibly be falling in love with him? Trust me, it doesn't take that long. And I would be willing to bet you're not alone in that boat. What? Her eyes shot back up across the table. Sissa, that boy has been in love with you since the day he came here after your first date. Her expression turned serious then. You're my baby sister and I've missed you for 20 years, but Harry is family now too. I don't want to have to choose between the two of you, so don't you dare do anything to screw this up. Sissa gave a soft chuckle and there were tears playing in her eyes when they heard the sound of little feet running towards them, and the distinctive sound of larger feet giving chase. To everyone's surprise it wasn't Andromeda's lap that the toddler bailed for. Instead he climbed deftly into Sissa's. And she was shocked to see her own eyes looking back up at her from under a mop of messy, black hair that closely resembled the man now catching his breath in the doorway. Aunt Issa, why you crying? She wrapped her arms around him and pulled him close, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. I'm not Buddy, your grandma just surprised me, that's all. He wrapped his little arms around her neck and returned the hug. A good prize. Yes, sweetheart. Andromeda met Sissa's eyes over the boy's head. Yeah, it was a good surprise. Harry finally caught his breath. He moved to stand behind Sissa's chair. He pecked her on the cheek and then ruffled Teddy's hair affectionately as the child continued to cling to his aunt. You win this time, Buddy. He looked back and forth between the two women, both of whom seemed to have wet cheeks. What kind of good surprise makes you both cry? Sissa turned to look up at him and shook her head. The best kind. The kind that you get when you aren't expecting them. He looked exceptionally nervous all of a sudden. Andromeda laughed. No, she meant me. I surprised her by not throwing you both out. By giving her a chance. She inclined her head towards their side of the table. How could I not when my grandson already seems to have accepted her as a part of our lives? Oh. His shoulders relaxed at her explanation. I think I owe you a thank you, Mr. Potter. You have managed to give my grandson another family member, and give me back my little sister all at the same time. A truly Gryffindor feat. Both sly. Hters chuckled and Harry laid a hand on Sis's shoulder. It's getting close to lunch, let's get out of Andromeda's hair. We'll be back next week. Why don't we go out? She looked up at him and then across to her sister. I mean, if you don't have other plans, maybe lunch out all together would be nice. The elder sister seemed to think it over for a second before she leaned forward and addressed her grandson. What do you think, Bud? Do you want to go out to lunch with Uncle Harry and Aunt Sissa? His eyes got wide and he nodded, bouncing up and down on his aunt's lap. Okay, where we going? The three adults exchanged glances and then Harry spoke. I think the Muggle world is better. Too many people will recognize us in our world, and I don't think we are quite ready for all of that. I agree. The blonde looked across the table. Andy, what do you suggest? After some debate about which restaurant they would choose, the group of them all headed for a little dinner on the outskirts of town. Andromeda didn't go there very often, and there was a good chance that no one she knew would be there. As they stepped into the little place, a young hostess greeted them. Hi guys, for today. She smiled at them as she led them to their table. When she set the menus down, she started to walk away, but she stopped, almost as if she couldn't help herself. She smiled at Sissa, who was still holding Teddy. I just wanted you to know that I think your son is adorable. And before any of the three of them could say anything, she disappeared back to the front. Sissa set Teddy down in the booster seat that the girl had provided and looked up at the other two. Nobody had said a word since the girl left. Finally Harry broke the silence. Well, at the moment he does have your eyes in my hair. I can see why she said it. Quote. She ignored him, instead focusing on her sister, who seemed to be staring off into space. Andy. Are you alright? Just thinking about Dora. Sorry. People always know he's my grandson. Nobody has ever mistaken me for his mother. It was just a shock. I'm sorry. Andromeda waved the rest of the apology away as their waiter arrived. The rest of the meal was spent laughing and talking, with all three of them trying to coax Teddy to finish his carrots so that he could have a cookie. When they had finished, they headed for the door, and outside they said their goodbyes. Harry took Teddy from Andromeda and tickled him one last time as the sisters embraced. When she was sure Harry wasn't listening, the brunette pulled her sister close and whispered, I'm serious about that boy. He is head over heels for you, don't break his heart. As they pulled away, Sissa gave her sister a smile before taking her nephew from Harry and kissing him goodbye. She returned him to his grandmother. And with promises that they would be back next week, the two of them linked arms and walked away up the street. Teddy squirmed until Andromeda shifted him so that he could watch them over her shoulder. But all of a sudden he blinked and they were gone. The next month passed them by in a blur, but Harry's friends were starting to notice that there was something going on. He was rarely seen in public anymore except at work. And there were numerous occasions that they would invite him to things and he would decline. Both Ron and Neville had tried to ask him about it, and even Hermione. One had mentioned something in passing about not seeing him out with the boys much. They didn't have much else to ground their suspicions on though. Harry seemed happier than they had ever seen him. There was no way that they were going to take the chance of penetrating that bubble. He had been through too much in his life for them to fight him on this. Eventually they chalked it up to him not wanting to be seen by the paparazzi. Even after 3 years, the cameras had a way of following around the boy who lived, trying to find something more interesting to tell the public than that he had solved yet another case in the Auror's office. Earlier in the summer there had been some tabloid speculation about the end of his relationship with Ginny, but when neither one of them had chosen to comment on it, it quietly disappeared. All that would change though the second someone got wind of why Harry Potter was being so very antisocial. There were a few occasions, when Sissa had some fancy party or another to go to, that Harry would make time for his friends, but the majority of his evenings were spent in her company. He had fallen for her hard and fast, and it was a breezy Saturday morning. On their way to Andromeda's that he told her so. He had apparated them to a point a little further away from her home than normal, and when she shot him a confused look, he just took her hand and smiled. They wandered quietly up the street for a couple houses, and then he stopped and turned her towards him. Her coat was open and whipping around her in the breeze, and so he grabbed a hold of it and pulled her close. Harry. She laughed and took hold of the collar of his coat to steady herself. What's going on? Why did we stop? He smiled at her and brushed her cold, red lips with a kiss. I have something I want to say to you, and I want you to hear it before we get to Andy's. Okay. There was a nervous edge to her voice. Sissa, I just want you to know that I have fallen in love with you. Completely, hopelessly. In love with you, and I wouldn't trade this feeling for anything in the world. She smiled up at him. That was not what she had been expecting when he stopped so suddenly. But that didn't make it any less perfect. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him before she replied in a whisper, I love you right back. A strong breeze whipped around them, lifting her hair and tugging at their coats. Their kiss seared through them both and they pulled apart breathless. What was that? He looked down at her curiously. Was that you? She shook her head and looked around them as the wind settled down. I think it was us. His expression showed her that he was still lost. I mean, our kiss, our love. I think it was magic. He picked her up and spun her in a circle, her long blonde hair flying out behind her. Brilliant. I didn't know magic worked like that. He set her back down, but he left one arm around her waist and guided her forward down the block. Come on love, let's go see your sister. And Teddy. Much like every Saturday the women sat and talked and caught up while the boys played. Normally conversation between the pair flowed easily, but today Sis seemed caught up in her own little world. Hey. Andromeda sent a dish towel flying across the table at her. I just asked you the same question 3 times. Where are you today? The blonde grinned and hitched her thumb over her shoulder. About 6 houses back that way at the top of the hill. Why? She bit her lip and looked over the edge of her mug at her big sister. He told me he loved me. What? Andromeda's cup hit the table hard. What did you say? Did you say it back? Are you actually admitting that there is something more than just a casual thing going on here? She smirked, and, for one little moment Andy thought she wasn't going to get an answer, and then, yes, I admit it, I love him. I said it back. She would never know how her sister got around the table so fast, but the next thing she knew she was being engulfed in a mass of dark chocolate curls, and a hug so tight that she thought she was being crushed. Andy, sis, hey, can't breathe. Sorry, she let go and crouched down in front of Sissa. I'm just so glad you're happy. Both of you. Thank you. Her smile grew as she caught sight of the boys coming back in the kitchen. Hey bud. She opened her arms to her nephew. As Andromeda moved back around the table, and he climbed up on her lap. Did you wear Uncle Harry out? A sleepy nod was all she got for an answer. Hey you. Her wiggling fingers snuck to the back of his knee and she tickled him. Are you going to start sleeping on me? He shook his head and stifled a yawn. Nope. He popped the P sound and then looked around quickly to see if anyone was going to admonish him for it. When no one did he grinned like the Cheshire Cat. Teddy. His grandmother drew his attention. Was there something that you wanted to ask your uncle? The little boy looked up at Harry from Narcissa's lap. Unca Harry, can I sweep at your house on Halloween? Harry looked nervous. He had never watched Teddy overnight before. Andromeda had left him for an afternoon when she and Sissa went shopping, but overnight was a whole different thing. Well, of course Teddy. Sissa answered for him. She smiled down at her nephew and then back up at Harry. Don't worry. I won't leave you by yourself. Harry sighed. Okay. He shifted his attention back to his godson. What do you want to stay with us for anyhow? Don't you want to go trick-or-treating with Grandma? Grandma has a date. He said it so nonchalantly that at first they didn't register what he had said. It took only seconds for them to both turn on Andromeda. A date? His eyebrows shot up and he crossed his arms. He looked every bit like a dad finding out his daughter was going to the prom. You have a date, and you didn't think that was worth sharing. She scoffed. Says the man, who had been dating my little sister for 2 months before he bothered to share the tiny detail. How long Andy? Her eyes slid from Harry to Sissa. What? How long have you been seeing, whomever this person is? The blonde was smirking. Andromeda may have been the perceptive one, but Narcissa was sneaky. She would find out all the details. Long enough. Her sister raised a perfectly manicured eyebrow at her. All right. About 6 weeks. I've been seeing him for about 6 weeks. And he's a muggle. No, he's not. He's very much a wizard. Half of Narcissa's mouth curled up in a smile. And even with Teddy snuggled into her, she managed to lean back in the chair with a haughty air. "You're the one that he has been seeing in secret." "Who?" Harry was obviously lost. "Maybe. You are. Huh. That's fantastic. Mother might even have approved of this one. He is a pureblood, although being a Gryffindor might have done him in." The dish towel was once again aimed at her head before she could really get going. "Who are you talking about?" Harry was desperately trying to come up with a list of possible candidates in his head. "My rebel of a big sister is, in fact, dating the Minister of Magic." "Narcissa." Andy looked mortified, but Harry smiled. "What? We don't keep secrets. I'm pretty sure that if we started keeping secrets from each other we would go crazy. Besides, it's not like the whole world isn't going to find out eventually." Coming from Harry Potter's mystery woman. "That's rich." "Oh." Sissa scrunched her nose and shook her head at her older sister. "They'll find out about us too. Now it's just a matter of which one will get more press coverage." "Don't worry. I'm sure that you will win." Both sisters chuckled at the thought, and at how delighted their mother would be at the thought. Halloween fell on a Wednesday, and so Harry had taken both Wednesday and Thursday off of work so that he could be home with Teddy and Narcissa. They had planned on Andromeda dropping him off around 4. But it seemed that the toddler had other ideas. About 2:30 the fireplace in the kitchen burst to life and Andromeda and Teddy both came spinning out of it. "Aunt Issa." Teddy launched himself at her and buried his face in her hair. "Save me. Save you." She chuckled, sending a curious look at Andy, who just rolled her eyes. "Save you from what, my darling boy?" "From Grandma. She's chasing me." "Edward Remus Lupin, I was not chasing you, you weren't listening to me. Don't you think hiding in Aunt Sissa's hair makes you safe?" He peeked up at her and he was relieved to see she was smiling. "Do you mind taking him early, sis? He won't stop asking to see you both." "He's fine. Neither one of us made any plans for today, we kind of assumed you guys would be here early." "What's this I hear about assumptions?" The kitchen door opened and Harry walked in. Instantly Teddy changed his hair to match his uncle's. "That ours were correct." She paused when he bent to kiss her. "That we are acquiring our guest a little early." "Ah, well, did we have any doubts?" She laughed with him. "No." She turned to look at her sister. "I got this covered, Andy. It's not like it's my first night with a toddler." Quote. "True." She swept over and crouched down to look in her grandson's eyes, which were now a perfect match for Narcissa's. "You be good for Aunt Sissa and Uncle Harry, okay? I'll see you tomorrow." He kissed her cheek and she stood up and headed for the fireplace. "Grandma." She turned back around. "I love you. I love you too." And she was gone. The hours passed rather quickly, and before they knew it supper was finished and Sissa had managed to talk Teddy into a bath. Harry was watching from the bathroom doorway as the pair laughed and played in the tub. Nah. Narcissa's clothes just as drenched as the toddler she was supposedly bathing. "How's it going in here, babe?" She turned over her shoulder and shot him a look. "I don't think I was ever quite this wet after bathing Draco." She stood up and grabbed a towel off of the counter and moved back to the tub, opening it and wrapping Teddy in it to dry him off. Harry laughed at the two of them and nimbly pecked them each on the cheek before he snuck back out the door. "I'll go grab some clothes." "For me or for Teddy?" she called jokingly at his retreating back. "Both." His voice came floating back down the hallway. She laughed and closed her eyes for a moment before turning back to Teddy. When she opened her eyes he was gone, the towel left discarded on the floor and wet footprints leading off down the hall. "Edward Remus Lupin, you get back here." She stood up and dashed into the hall after him, only to see that the footprints had already made it down the stairs. She gave chase, and as she hit the bottom of the stairs she heard the door to the kitchen open. Right on his heels she swept in and scooped him up in the towel that she had had the foresight to bring with her. In her pursuit of the giggling toddler she didn't see the girl that was standing on the kitchen hearth, watching all of this happen. The girl was frozen, watching the scene play out in front of her. Of all the things she thought she would find when she got there, this was not one of them. She didn't mean to, but she must have made some sort of noise, because all of a sudden 2 sets of identical icy blue eyes shot up to look at her. "Miss Granger." Narcissa froze as she looked across the room at the girl Harry considered one of his best friends. "What are you doing here?" She set Teddy down on the floor, and the toddler, having only met Hermione a few times at parties, hid behind her skirts. "I could ask you the same thing." She looked around the kitchen once more, as if to reassure herself that she had indeed gotten out at the correct grate. Where's Harry? As if to answer her question, the kitchen door swung open and he came in carrying a set of clothes for Teddy and Sissa's wand. He was looking down and, at first he didn't realize that they had a second guest. Babe, do you know where his socks went? I thought you set them out before. He looked up at Narcissa, and he followed her gaze across the room. Hermione. His face suddenly turned funny and he brought his hand up to sweep across his face. That's the thing I forgot. What are you talking about? Her gaze was cold and icy, but there was concern in her words. Darling, what's going on? It's Halloween. He moved so that he was standing next to her. Ever since the war, on Halloween Hermione and I have gone to visit my parents' graves. I forgot to cancel this year. He looked away from her and focused on Hermione. I'm really sorry, my own. Things came up, and I got a little distracted. I can see that. Her eyes had once again found the toddler that was a perfect blend of Harry and Narcissa. Would you care to explain this? She nodded to Teddy, who was slowly starting to peek around his aunt's skirts at her. Explain, he looked at her curiously. But then he looked down at his godson and laughed. Hermione, you remember Teddy, my godson. He stressed the last word of his sentence. And the girl visibly relaxed. I thought that I had a secret child. How would I have kept that hidden for all these years? Especially from Ginny, you would have thought she would have remembered something like that. Narcissa laughed and grabbed the child from the floor. Aunt Isa. He squealed with delight as she tickled him while she finished drying him off. She took his clothes from Harry while he was trying to talk to Hermione. But he looks just like you. Her eyes shifted back and forth between them. Both of you. He has your hair and nose, but he has her eyes. How does that work, and why is she here? It works because he is a metamorphagus, like Tonks was. And she has a name, and it's Narcissa, and she's here because she lives here the majority of the time. Hermione took a step back and shook as if someone had slapped her. She lives here. She watched as the pair moved effortlessly around each other as they dressed Teddy faster than she had ever seen anyone dress a toddler. Yes, well, no, technically she still lives at the manor. But we've been spending most of our time here. It's easier on Draco if we aren't sleeping in the same house as him. Hermione seemed to process what Harry was saying in slow motion. They could visibly see it as his words sunk in for her. You're together then. She looked uncomfortable with the thought, but unlike Draco and himself, it didn't appear as if Hermione were going to curse Sissa. When did that happen? Better yet, how did that happen? My birthday. It happened on my birthday, when everyone was busy and I went to a bar, by myself. You picked up Narcissa Black in a bar. Hermione wasn't sure which part of Harry's story was less believable. The part where they had secretly been together for 3 months, or the part where he goes to a bar alone and winds up dating the youngest Black sister. Sissa laughed and passed Teddy to Harry. He did, and I have to say you are no more shocked than I was. The sight of a smile tugging at the corners of Hermione's lips gave Harry just the confidence he needed to leave the two women alone. He leaned towards Sissa and brushed a kiss across her forehead. I'm going to go put this little man to bed, I'll be right back. She nodded and gave Teddy a goodnight kiss before the two boys headed out of the room. All right, she turned to Hermione, still smiling, let me have it. Excuse me. The younger witch's brow furrowed and she shook slightly. Oh please, my dear. You show up here looking for Harry and instead you find me soaking wet, chasing a toddler around the kitchen. Then you suddenly find out that I am dating your best friend and yet he hasn't said a word about me. Come on, let me have it. Much to her surprise Hermione laughed. You're right, I should hate you. And I should want to get Harry as far away from you as possible. You're a monster, or, she paused. Had Narcissa ever really been a monster? She had stood by and watched while Bellatrix had tortured her, but she hadn't helped her do it. Hermione. The girl's eyes shot back to hers. Is that all right? May I call you Hermione? Slowly, as if she was having a debate with herself about whether or not to allow it, the brunette nodded. Then you may call me Sissa, or Narcissa. Whichever you find yourself more comfortable with. The girl just nodded again, seemingly unable to form words. Hermione, I know that you see me as a monster as the enemy, but... No wait please. I truly didn't mean that. You never pursued means of hurting us. Even when you did battle us in the manner you were doing so to protect Mal Draco. You're not a monster. I'm terribly sorry I said that. You are forgiven. I most likely would have said the same thing, or something even worse, had I been in your position. Now, is there anything that you would like to ask me? You are probably the closest thing Harry has to a sister besides Ginevra. It is your right as family to ask questions of the girlfriend. Hermione chuckled again. Girlfriend. Sissa's low chuckle joined Hermione's. Yes, it sounds rather odd, doesn't it? I don't think there is a better word though. Lover sounds informal, dirty even. I'm not his mistress, because he's not married. Partner is so cold, I'm not sure. We just settled on girlfriend one day and left it at that. Well, okay then. I do have a question actually. How am I faring in comparison to Draco finding out? Far better, I'm afraid. My son took it upon himself to send curses at Harry. If I hadn't jumped between them when I did, I'm afraid Harry may have started cursing back. He didn't before. No, she shook her head, smiling softly. He said afterwards that he knew if he had it would have just upset me. Though, she seemed to retreat into her memory for a moment. I ended up in tears that night anyway. I'm sorry. Don't be. They were tears that allowed me to heal, allowed me to become more of the person I am with Harry instead of the cold, icy woman I was. You seem happy here, together. We had noticed a change in Harry before, but we didn't know what it was. Now I see that it was you. You're good for him, and he for me. I love him. Anyone who looks at the two of you together would know that. You're quite the pair. I have one more question. Just the one. She arched an eyebrow at the girl that both Harry and Draco had told her so much about. Well, no, probably not. But for now, of course. What is it? What made you do it? I'm sorry. I'm assuming that Harry is the one that asked you out, not the other way around. What made you say yes? I don't know. This overwhelming sensation that it was the right thing to do. She laughed as the younger witch's eyes went wide. I'm joking. Honestly, there wasn't something in particular that made me do it. I took a chance. Either I was wasting one night, or I was starting my future. Really, what did I have to lose? Well, when you put it that way, I understand. I was just trying to picture it as all. It doesn't seem like he would have been all that romantic about it. Oh, you have no idea. She let that statement mean what it would to Hermione. She couldn't bring herself to tell her that he'd asked her on a date as she left his home the morning after she had passed out on his couch. There's one more thing, Sissa. She tried the name out on her tongue. Before, when you said Harry was like a brother to me, you were right. I'm sure that Draco threatened Harry about hurting you, and now I'm telling you not to hurt him. Don't worry. I have no plans to. And if I ever do, you may have to get in line behind my sister to kill me. I take it Andromeda approves. She does. They both looked up at Harry's voice. She didn't at first. I thought she was going to throw us both out of the house, but she came around. He went to Hermione and kissed her cheek as an apology for not greeting her properly before. Then he made his way around the table to sit with his arm around Sissa. You're doing surprisingly well with all of this, by the way. Well, after the initial shock of thinking you two had love child that no one knew about, yeah. Better than Draco did, I'm told. Harry laughed, thinking about the night that Draco had walked in on them in the library. Yeah, how much did Sissa tell you about that? Only that Draco became angry and that she got between you. His head spun to look at the blonde. You told her that? I didn't tell her everything. Just that you were defending yourself and that I got between you. None of the details, except that I cried. Well, if you're talking about crying, you two must really be bonding. Hermione and Narcissa smiled at each other, and the brunette nodded. It's a start. I could see a friendship forming here. I agree. She leaned over and kissed Harry's jaw. See, it's fine. You're friends. If they are really your friends, we'll figure out a way to accept us. She's right, Harry. You two act like any other couple, and I don't know how, but you look like one too. No offense, Sissa. None taken. All that means is that I'm aging gracefully. They both laughed, and Harry just stared at them. He was glad they were getting along, but the thought kind of stunned him. Well, he pulled her further into his side. You may be able to win over all the women, but Ron may be a different story. Harry, she looked from him to Sissa, this is going to sound incredibly rude, and for that I'm sorry. She turned back to Harry. Have you met Ronald? What? Ronald Weasley, tall, red hair, freckles, used to date me, ring a bell. Yes Hermione, I know who Ron is. And you've seen Narcissa right, small, blonde, gorgeous. Yeah. Cissa laughed. Darling, you are being incredibly thick. I believe what Hermione is saying is that if I put on a tight dress, and do my makeup Mr. Weasley won't have a word to say against me. Hermione blushed. Well, I wasn't going to put it like that, but yes exactly. Harry sighed, and looked back and forth between them. I guess there's really only one way to find out. With Hermione's help, Narcissa set about organizing a dinner party. Though as far as everyone else knew, she was helping Harry. The guest list was exclusive. Narcissa had finally convinced him to tell their secret. But there were only a few people that he chose to trust. At least for now. The party was planned for mid-November, and with the help of Kreacher and Lottie it was all coming together nicely. Formal invitations had been sent out, and Cissa was sitting in the library trying to make a seating chart. Harry, do you know whom Mr. Weasley is bringing to dinner? He put 2 down on the invitation. He looked over her shoulder at the card she was holding. I have no idea. Hermione may know. I haven't really been keeping up with everyone else's love lives lately. He bent and planted a kiss on her ruby lips. I've been distracted by my own. A distraction, huh? Is that all I am to you? A coy grin played on her lips as she taunted him, knowing just the reaction that her words would entice. You, he growled as he swept her up off the couch, scattering all of her plans throughout the room, or the best sort of distraction. She laughed as he carried her out of the RO. And up the stairs towards the bedroom. I thought I was the wild one, darling. He tossed her lightly in his arms as if she weighed no more than a feather, causing her to gasp and cling to his shoulders for support. You have no idea. An hour later they lay covered only by the emerald sheet that Cissa had pulled over the top of them. Her head was lying on his shoulder, his arm tucked neatly around her. I am never going to finish setting up for this party if I don't get out of this bed. She made to get up, but his arm wrapped more tightly around her slender waist. Oh no you don't. You distract me all the time. I get to distract you for the entire afternoon. Harry, your dinner party, yes it is yours. He had raised an eyebrow at her, but she rolled her eyes and kept going. Your party starts in 3 hours, and if you expect it to go well, if you expect them to accept me, then everything has to be perfect. And everything can't be perfect down there if I spend the entire afternoon up here with you. He raised his arm and cupped the side of her face in his palm before running his fingers back through her blonde waves. Oh stop worrying. Hermione will be here in another to finish up with all the little details, and to act as hostess until you come downstairs. Oh Merlin. She shot out of the bed before he could grab her, and she took the top sheet with her as she dashed for the bathroom. Cissa. He grabbed his boxers from the floor and followed her through the door that she had left open. What in the world is going on? Harry could see the lioness within when she turned around and faced him. Hermione will be here within the hour, and I am nowhere close to ready. Once she gets here I am not going to have a chance to take a shower, and Merlin knows I will not be hosting this dinner party and officially meeting the rest of your friends with sex hair. He couldn't help but laugh at what she was saying, and even though she was standing in front of him in nothing but a sheet. The look in her eyes showed just how serious she was. When he started to tell her that she looked fine, he quickly shut himself up, instead choosing to grab her around the waist and practically tackle her into the shower. Her high-pitched squeal echoed off of the tile walls, and Harry took a moment to be thankful that they were alone in the house. When they turned the water off they were still laughing. It seemed they never really got tired of each other. When they heard a noise coming from downstairs they both froze. Hermione wasn't supposed to be there for another half an hour. And Kreacher and Lottie wouldn't be making that much noise. They both grabbed for their wands, and with a flick of Narcissa's wrist they were both dressed. Harry tucked a strand of wet, blonde hair behind her ear. Stay behind me. You forget, my dear, a lion makes for a perfectly good defense system. He shook his head, but smiled. Let's see who it is first, before you scare the living daylights out of them. Together, hand in hand, they crept down the stairs, wands at the ready. When they reached the landing at the library they heard another loud crash from within. Ready? She nodded and closed her eyes momentarily, preparing herself for the shift. Harry peeked around the door and cracked a smile. Go ahead, we may as well make this memorable. She raised an eyebrow at him, but she trusted him. With one last kiss to his cheek she shifted, and a tawny lioness with icy blue eyes was standing at his side. He drew his wand and with a wink to her he pushed the door open with a bang. Bloody hell. Ron spun around clumsily, even from across the room they could tell that he was drunk. Ha, ha, Harry. He raised a finger towards Narcissa, a look of fright etching itself on his face. Lion. The redhead seemed on the verge of fainting when Sissa took a small step forward. Ah. He leapt back and tripped over the coffee table, landing flat on the ground. She moved to stand over the top of him. And her sharp eyes looked into his for one moment. Then the lioness was gone. Instead Harry was standing over him and pulling him to his feet. A potion was pressed into his hand and when he had finished it he looked back up at his best friend. You all right, mate? Ron shook his head and blinked a few times, obviously trying to decide if what he had seen was real or not. While he was shaking his head he caught a glimpse of movement by the door. My own. Harry turned around to look at Hermione and he cautiously shot her a look. A roll of her eyes towards the ceiling told him that Sissa had disappeared back upstairs. Hello, Ron. She nodded at him and then embraced Harry. Hey Harry. This place is a mess. What happened in here? I got distracted earlier, and ended up upstairs and when I came back down Ron was here, and drunk, and there was a bloody lion. She looked at the taller man curiously before turning to Harry. A lion, really? She shifted her gaze back. And Ronald, why are you drunk at 4:30 on a Saturday afternoon? Yes, a lion. Well, it was a girl lion, so a lioness I guess. And I wasn't that drunk. You broke my coffee table. Harry pointed behind him and Ron looked over his shoulder at the broken table. Sorry about that, mate. Reparo. The table began to magically mend itself as he turned back to the witch standing before him. There really was a lioness though. It looked right at me, with these big blue eyes, like ice. Harry. Hermione crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow. He nodded to her and smiled, something Ron didn't miss. Wait, what do I not know? He was looking back and forth between them, sure that they were hiding something. It might be a good idea to tell him now. She seemed to think about her words carefully. That way if we have a She paused trying to decide on a word. Problem, we can get it under control before the others arrive. Harry considered what she was saying and sighed. Creature. The elf popped up at his elbow. Will you please go see if the mistress can join us down here? Of course, sir. I will fetch the mistress. With another loud crack he disappeared. Mistress. Ron was practically shouting. There is a mistress in this house now. Why didn't you tell me? Me. I thought we were best mates. Wait. He looked down at Hermione. Why aren't you freaking out? I've already met her, Ronald. Did you really think that Harry helped me plan a dinner party? She rolled her eyes and headed for the center of the room. You still haven't told us why you were drunk in the middle of the day, by the way. Charlotte dumped me. Quote. Who's Charlotte? Harry was confused. He didn't realize that Ron was dating someone. After all, he and Hermione had only broken up in September. She works for George. We'd been seeing each other a couple weeks. Who cares, I'm over it. Harry didn't believe him, and Hermione's sudden coughing fit sounded like there was a "sure you are" buried in there somewhere. With a sudden crack, creature reappeared next to Hermione. Mistress is asking for Miss Granger. Of course. She nodded to the elf, and rushed past them both out the door. My own likes her then. Harry looked up from where he was changing some last-minute details on the table. Your girl. Hermione likes her. Don't call her my girl. Hermione likes her. I think they've become pretty good friends. I'm glad. See, she needs some friends. Harry caught himself before he said Sissa's name, not wanting to ruin the moment later on. The two eased into a comfortable silence as Ron sat and watched Harry put the finishing touches on the library. Dinner was planned for 6:30, and it was a little past 5 when Hermione reappeared. She took Harry by the arm and pulled him to the door. She's ready, are you? Not even close. He stepped away from her and opened the library door right as she stepped onto the landing. Hey beautiful. Hey yourself. Did you tell them? I didn't have to tell Hermione. She figured it out. But we may have to draw Ron a picture. I don't think a picture will be necessary. She swept a hand down her figure and he stepped back to really look at her. A fitted, but classy, tawny-colored dress was draped around her body, and her hair was pulled back at the nape of her neck. When her eyes caught the light just right, Harry had no trouble at all seeing the lioness that stood before him. Come on, let's go blow his mind. Twice. He kissed her and wrapped his arm around her waist as he pulled her into the room with him. Hey Ron, he waited until the other young man had started to turn before he kept speaking. There is someone I would like to introduce you to. Ron, this is Lady Malfoy. Ron shook his head when he saw her standing next to Harry. What the hell kind of joke is this? He looked back and forth between the pair and Hermione, as if waiting for someone to call out, "Gotcha." When no one did, Ron's face paled. You're with the ferret's mother. You are sleeping with Malfoy's mother. No, this isn't happening. She's a bitch. No way is this really real. She's drugging you, or casting some sort of spell. Both Harry and Hermione had had enough. But Sissa stepped between the both of them and Ron, turning her back to the boy that was verbally abusing her. You two calm down. This is the sort of reaction I was expecting from everyone. Hermione and Andy both took it far better than I ever could have imagined. Let me handle this. She saw Harry reach for his wand and she grabbed his wrist. Don't. You don't want to fight him. He didn't take his eyes off of Ron, but he responded to Sissa. Oh yes I do. Harry, she's right, don't do anything stupid. I won't. He lifted Sissa by her waist and suddenly he was standing between Ron and the two women with his wand drawn. You listen to me, Ron Weasley, that is the woman I love. She is no longer the Lady Malfoy, and you will not call her that. She is Narcissa Black, and so Narcissa is fine. And if you can't manage that, ma'am will do. Now, you will apologize to Sissa for everything you just said, you will apologize to Hermione for your language, and when Draco gets here you will apologize to him for calling him a ferret. You invited that git to dinner. Hermione wasn't sure which one of them moved first, but all at once Sissa had leapt into the air, Y had jumped out of her way to the left and Hermione had taken up position on her right. Ronald Weasley, you will apologize and I would suggest you do it now. All of a sudden the door behind Ron opened. Ed and Neville followed a wide-eyed Luna into the room. Harry, Hermione, Kitty, she reached out a hand to Narcissa, what's going on in here? They've lost their minds. Ron pointed a shaky finger at his two best friends. She's corrupted them. Who has? Neville looked just as confused as Ron had the first time he had seen the lioness. In the blink of an eye Sissa was once again standing between Harry and Hermione. He believes I have. She extended a hand towards Luna, Miss Lovegood. Luna took her hand without hesitation and smiled. Ms. Black, I didn't know you were an animagus. She's just as beautiful as you are. Why thank you. That's sweet of you to say. She turned her megawatt smile on Neville. Mr. Longbottom. He was more reluctant, but he took her hand. She understood his hesitation, they all did. Ms. Black, Luna is right, your lion form is truly gorgeous. I must ask though, why does Ron think you corrupted them? Oh, because she's sleeping with Harry. Luna didn't seem to think through the outcome of her statement before she said it. At the astonished gasp she refocused on the group. Oh sorry, was that too blunt? I really am trying to do better about that. It's okay Luna. Harry took a step closer to Sissa and wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her in to kiss her temple. You're right. But it's more than that, I've fallen in love with her. And she with me. Neville looked shocked for a moment, but he recovered quickly. Well, I guess we will just have to get used to it then. He stepped forward and took Sissa from Harry by the elbows and kissed her cheek. He dropped his voice to a whisper so that only she could hear him. If you ever do anything to hurt him, I will destroy you. She stepped back from him and to his surprise she smiled. He's lucky to have friends like you. You're okay with this? They all turned to look at Ron, who was looking at Neville. If anyone has a right to be pissed about this it's you, and you're just going to accept it like it's nothing. Well, he looked at the pair standing in front of him, and Harry looked happier than he had ever seen him, yeah. If she makes him happy then I'm going to support them. He's my friend, and she's not her sister. He turned back to the pair. Congratulations guys. Congratulations on what? A drawl sounded from the doorway. Their last dinner guest had arrived right on time. Draco was observing from the doorway. It was Hermione that answered him, finding happiness in managing not to kill Ronald. To everyone's, even his mother's, surprise, Draco smiled down at Hermione. Damn. You miss all the good stuff when you show up on time. Without missing a beat Hermione replied, didn't anyone ever tell you that on time was late, Draco? He opened his mouth, thought better of it. and then looked to his mother for help. For her part, Cissa just laughed and shook her head. "You're on your own, sweetheart. For I recall telling you that quite a number of times when you were growing up." His ears reddened and he ducked his head. "Thanks for all the help, Mom. Anyway," he looked up at the collection of people gathered in the room. "What are we not killing Weasley for? For insulting your mother. And for yelling at Harry and Hermione. When we got here they were trying to get him to apologize. Which I'm still not going to do, by the way." Ron spoke up from across the room, and both Harry and Draco took a step in his direction. Narcissa grabbed Harry, and Hermione put a hand on Draco's arm to stop his curse. "You have one more chance to apologize, Ron, to all three of them. Cissa, Draco and Hermione. Or else I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "There's no need to ask." Gruffly he marched past all of them and headed for the door. "I'm not apologizing to a Malfoy. And I'm sure as hell not apologizing to her." He jerked his head in Cissa's direction. "I can see myself out. Thanks." Hermione and Draco were his last obstacles on the way to the door, and he bumped roughly into Hermione's shoulder on the way out. "Hey Ron." He turned back to her only for a second, but it was long enough. "Silenda a cerveau." His hand grabbed for his throat and he coughed hard. When he caught his breath he fixed his glare on Hermione. "What did you do? She prevented you from telling their secret." His gaze shifted to Luna. "That was smart thinking, Hermione. Thanks." She turned to Ron, who was still standing in the doorway. "You're free to go now, but know this, if you try and tell anyone about Harry and Cissa you may find that you will never be telling anyone anything again." "What the devil does that mean?" With a nod from Hermione, Draco took Ron's arm and pulled him out of the room towards the kitchen. "Just don't get any ideas, Weasley. Potter and my mother are stronger than you think." With that he left him standing on the kitchen hearth and returned upstairs. After Ron's outburst the rest of the evening went by splendidly. Draco seemed to take all of the people he had once loathed in stride. He knew now that they all had one thing in common: they all wanted to see the couple on the couch happy. He didn't notice when the brunette sank down on the couch next to him. But he looked over when she spoke. "What are you thinking about so hard over here, Lord Malfoy?" "I'm not the Lord Malfoy." "He is. The only reason I'm still a Malfoy is so that the fortune goes somewhere. I would have gladly taken her name." "I'm sorry." She started to stand up to move away and he touched her arm. "No, I am. You were just trying to be polite." "I was being an ass." "Huh. I never thought I'd see the day where the infamous Draco Malfoy was apologizing to a Muggleborn." "Don't get used to it, Granger." A smile tugged on the corners of his lips. "No, I was just King that even though I was adamantly against this at first, I'm glad that she found him. He is so much better than father ever was. I got the impression. She seems to have become a different person with him." They sat quietly for a moment, watching the pair as they worked together to beat Neville and Luna at Wizard's chess. "No." She turned to look at him, and he continued. "She's not a different person, she's herself. She had to become someone else to be a Malfoy. This her, the real her, was just buried in there the whole time. The lion among the snakes, it turns out. I don't think she was the only one." "Oh, well, for a snake, you seem awfully comfortable here in the lion's den." He turned his chin down to look at her and she was surprised to see that the smile on his face was a truly genuine one. "When you were raised by a lioness and a snake you must make a choice. I chose the snake, thinking that venom was surely a better way to protect oneself. I was wrong. For the lion taught me many things. And one of them was that your family, your pride, is the best protection you can have." He paused and waited for her to say something, but she was enthralled by what he was saying. "I should have listened to my mother a long time ago, if not her words, then her actions. She is someone that I would be proud to be." He looked over to where she was tucked close under Harry's arm. Quote, "And I think that she's found her pride here among the rest of you lions. My mother may be the queen of Slytherin, but she would have made one hell of a Gryffindor." Hermione drug her eyes around the group sitting there and settled once again on Draco. "You know, if things would have been different, I think you would have too." To his surprise she planted a kiss on the underside of his jaw and got up. An action that didn't go unnoticed by his mother. The evening ended quietly, and as they were all saying goodbye Cissa pulled Draco to the side. "I saw that, in the library with Hermione." She smiled. "Give her time. And then give it a shot." "What?" He looked down at his mother like she was crazy. What are you talking about? The kiss. I saw it. And I saw her eyes when she came over and joined us. Whatever you two were talking about really meant something to her. I think, if you want it, you may have a shot there that you didn't have before. A knowing smile crossed her lips. There was nothing that he could hide from her. She was his mother after all. He bent and kissed her cheek. We'll see Mom. Tell Harry thanks for me. I'm assuming you won't be coming home tonight. I'd say that's a pretty safe assumption. She kissed him back and gave him a little shove towards the fireplace. Think about it. He nodded, and in a whoosh of green flames he was gone. The other 3 guests followed suit, and soon they were alone in the house once more. She sighed as she moved into his waiting arms. That went well. That may be an overstatement. I met with Neville and Luna. Honestly, I was expecting more resistance from Neville than Ronald. People surprise you, I guess. Well, Neville had a point. I am his friend, and you are not Bellatrix. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. As far as Ron goes, well, I'm just glad Hermione thought of that secret-keeping charm in time. Who knows who he would have told. Hey, she moved her chin up and kissed his cheek. I think 5 out of 6 is a pretty good acceptance rate. I'm not complaining one bit. Though I am sorry that you are losing your best friend over me. I wish. Hush. He pressed a finger gently over her lips. Ron's reaction to us is Ron's problem. Either he will get over it and accept that you are now the most important person in my life, or we will have our parting of ways. Neither option is your fault. She chuckled against his finger. I think I'm a rather large factor in either result. He dropped one shoulder and swiftly lifted her into his arms bridal style. Nah, I think it's me. He headed up the stairs with her held firmly to his chest. What was going on between you and Draco before he left? She snorted a small burst of air out of her nose and nuzzled her face into the crook of his neck. He's being daft. I was trying to fix it. I don't know if I succeeded though. She felt rather than heard his chuckle as he carried her up the last flight of stairs to their bedroom. What's he being daft about? A girl. He unceremoniously tossed her onto the bed. That's not an answer, Sissa. He left her lying there and headed for the bathroom to change for bed. She sighed and rolled over on her stomach, propping herself up on her elbows. Hermione. He's being daft about Hermione. Harry's head stuck back out of the bathroom. Draco and my own. He paused and seemed to consider it for a moment. He shrugged. Hey, who would have guessed we would end up together? They seem more likely than us. They certainly would keep each other on their toes. He laughed, but then again have come to enjoy N.O.T. knowing exactly what I will be coming home to at night. You best watch yourself, Lord Potter. You may just find yourself coming home to an empty bed. She smiled and apparated herself to just outside the door. When Harry poked his bed back out of the bathroom, he gasped. He didn't think that she would actually leave. Through the crack in the door she watched him fight with himself for a second before she walked back in the room. Careful there. You never know what you may lose. He wrapped her in his arms and held on tight. I'm sorry. I didn't think. Please don't ever disappear again. I didn't go anywhere. I was in the hallway. But now you know, I won't be taken advantage of in a relationship again, Harry. If this is going to work, we are going to have to be equals. In every sense. I know. He sighed into her hair. I guess Draco wasn't the only one being daft tonight. No, but I know the message sunk in for him. We will have to wait and see. You told him to ask her out. I did. It worked for you. And I think that if Hermione considers what I told her the first time she came here on Halloween, she will give him a chance, just like I gave you. I was a chance, and a risk, and a mystery. And the most certain thing that I've ever done. She pulled his lips down to hers and they were lost in each other for the rest of the night. It was Thursday morning, sitting at breakfast, that Sissa was interrupted by the whoosh of green flames in the hearth. She looked up to find Hermione standing there. A smile split her face and she moved to wrap her in a hug. Thank you. I take it he listened. The younger witch nodded. He did. And we had a good time. You raised a very polite young man. Well, that's always good to hear. She kissed Hermione's cheek. Would you like something to eat before work? You and Harry can just go together from here. That would be lovely, thank you. The kitchen door opened and Harry came in fighting with his tie. There is an awful low tea of laughter in here for 7:30 in the morning. Hermione. He looked confused at the sight of his best friend sitting with his beloved at the breakfast table. What are you doing here this early? She just came to thank me. Sissa smiled and lifted her eyebrows at Harry, who took the hint well. Ah, so neither one of us is completely daft then. That's good to know. He pecked her on the cheek as he moved around the table. Neither one of the men in your life is completely useless. I take it you told him. Had to, we don't do secrets. Besides the whole us being a secret thing. Actually Sissa, I don't think that we are a complete secret anymore. I mean, we keep telling people, we may as well tell everyone. Harry, she looked over at Sissa with an apologetic look, sorry. It's just that after Ronald's reaction I think you guys may need to take this slow. Give it a couple weeks and tell a few more people at Christmas. Then a few more after that, and a few more after that, just go slow. But Hermione, wouldn't it be better? Harry, she's right. We can ease people into it, rather than just taking out an advertisement in the Prophet. Though that would be a sight. That ski Etter woman would be furious that she missed the story of the decade. Okay, I get the point. No Rita, no papers, just a few at a time. We will do this your way. Hermione and Narcissa locked eyes and both dissolved into laughter. What is so funny? He was looking back and forth between the two. Nothing, darling, nothing. It's just that you are learning. I will most always get my way. In tea you know the old Muggle saying Harry, happy wife, happy life. At her statement both Harry and Narcissa turned pink. She's not my wife Hermione. The younger witch gathered her things and headed for the grate. Close enough. And in a second green whoosh, she was gone. They went back and forth debating on whom they were going to tell at Christmas, and who was going to have to wait until the next round. Their answer came by way of Andromeda. She had decided that Teddy was big enough that she would simply host Christmas at her house that year, and she sent over a guest list for their approval. To Sissa's relief it was rather small and intimate, and the addition of one Kingsley Shacklebolt on the list didn't escape the youngest Black sister's notice. They really were going to get their showdown on who would receive the most attention. When she went over the list Sissa wasn't surprised to find it full of Order members and people that they had both been raised to avoid. She was grateful that now those same people were considered friends, and close enough ones that some were even considered family. Everyone knew that Molly Weasley hosted Christmas at the Burrow every year, and Eve Ryan knew that Harry and Hermione were always invited. So when the letter arrived at Grimmauld telling Harry when Christmas at the Burrow was planned for, Sissa was surprised to see him throw it directly in the wastebasket. Harry, what are you doing? She reached for the letter only to find his hand encircle her wrist. No, leave it. I won't be going to Christmas at the Burrow this year. Molly always has it on Christmas Day. And Christmas Day is reserved for family. I thought maybe we would invite Draco and Hermione here, and Andromeda and Teddy, and we could have a small Christmas dinner of our own before your sister's party. You don't want to go to the Weasleys. Harry, when is the last time you didn't celebrate Christmas with them? I've celebrated Christmas with them since I was 11 years old. But that was because they were the closest thing to family I had. He tugged on her wrist and she laid her head on his chest, while he buried his nose in her hair. Now I have you, and what passes for our family. Things change, and I wouldn't have it any other way. She took a deep breath and sighed. At least tell her that you won't be there. That way they aren't looking for you. You may want to call Hermione first, then you could both turn down the invitation in one letter and really cause the rumors to fly. He laughed and kissed the top of her head. Can you call Hermione for me? I'm running late and I have to get to work early today. Something has come up and they called and most everyone. Concern filled her eyes, but she stepped away from him and nodded. I will. Be careful. I want you to come home in the same condition you leave here in Lord Potter. Yes, Ms. Black. He kissed her softly, and then pecked her on the nose and disappeared. It was Sunday, and Draco and Hermione were supposed to be coming for lunch anyway, so she figured she would just wait and ask her then. Sissa was pleased that the relationship between her son and her friend was working out so nicely. Even they had admitted that they went really well together. Just before noon the grate lit up and Hermione stepped out, Draco close on her heels. Sissa embraced them both while Creature moved their lunch up to the library. Only 3 plates. There was a turn to Draco's voice. Where's Harry? Work. Something came up and Shacklebolt called all of the Auror's office in this morning. I was in the bathroom. But I heard his voice from the fireplace in our bedroom. Ah. Draco accepted her answer, though he did grimace when she referred to it as their bedroom. No matter how much he told himself that he was okay with this, he still didn't like to think about it being their bedroom. So Hermione, Harry received a letter this morning regarding Christmas and he wanted me to ask you what your plans were. Assuming that you still received yours as well. The younger witch laughed, and a curious expression crossed Draco's face. What letter? What are you doing for Christmas? She put a hand on his arm, and for the moment ignored him, addressing his mother instead. I wasn't planning on attending. I assume Harry is planning on spending the day with you. It was Sis's turn to laugh, with all of us actually. He wanted me to ask the two of you if you would care to join us here Christmas Day. I believe he's planning on asking Andromeda as well, making a family day out of it. I'm family. Her voice squeaked a bit at the thought. I believe you qualify in more ways than one, Hermione. Harry sees you as a sister, and you are dating my son. I think that makes you worthy of spending Christmas with us. If you would like to, of course. Hermione's smile lit up her face, and seemed to be contagious, because when the door opened and Harry came in, looking battered and tired but mostly in one piece. 3 smiling faces turned to meet him. Well, that's a sight to see. What are you 3 grinning at? As she took in the state of his clothes, Sissa jumped to her feet and started fussing over him. By the time he got her assured that he was fine, and settled next to him on the couch, both Draco and Hermione were grinning even broader than they had been before. What? Well, we were just talking about how you and I are both turning the Weasleys down for Christmas, and how since we will be here together, how much fun it could be to play a little harmless prank. Yo, you want to send pictures of us together at Christmas to the Weasleys? Harry seemed to consider the idea for a moment. Wouldn't that be overkill after the letter? Draco's eyes shot up from where he had been staring at Hermione. What letter? Oh, she didn't tell you. He turned to look down at the blonde resting against his side. I thought that was the whole point. She shrugged. I hadn't gotten that far yet. And then you came home all bruised and torn and distracted me. She kissed the underside of his jaw just as she finished speaking, effectively distracting him from his train of thought as well. See, annoying isn't it? He gently shoved her off of him and fixed her with what was supposed to be a stern glare. You woman, are evil. Her sly grin slunk its way onto her lips. I know. Harry sighed and turned his attention back to Draco and Hermione. We thought it would be funny to send a letter, together, saying that we had other plans for Christmas Day, and that we were regret fully declining their offer to join them. Oh, that sounds like it was your idea, Mother. No offense, Potter, but that is a very Slytherin thing to do. Sissa laughed and summoned both parchment and ink from her desk. Oh, I'm taking all of the credit, except that I can't actually write it for you. She passed the materials to Hermione. They would know it wasn't you that wrote it, but please go ahead. This is going to be fun. And so they sent the letter, all 4 hoping that the response to their refusal would come in the form of a letter, and not the form of some Weasley family member or Annette. Her showing up here to have a little chat. As they sat around trying to decide what the reaction from the Weasley clan would be, Harry took the opportunity to flow call Andromeda and invite her and Teddy to Christmas. By the time they said goodbye, no one was surprised that the minister was also invited to Christmas at Grimmauld. Narcissa was surprised that by the end of the night there was still no response from the burrow. That surprise didn't last until morning. The sun was just peeking through the curtains of their bedroom windows when Creature appeared in their room the next morning. I am sorry, Master and Mistress. But the Weasley woman is downstairs and she is yelling for Creature to wake up Master Potter. She is wanting to talk to you, sir. Narcissa rolled over to face Creature and smiled sleepily at the elf. Thank you, Creature, I will get Master Harry out of bed. You remember our deal, right? No one except Draco, Hermione and Andromeda can know that I am here. Yes, Mistress. Creature will not breath a word of Mistress to the Weasley woman. Thank you, Creature. Yes, ma'am. With a bob of his head the elf disappeared. Narcissa rolled back over and gently kissed Harry's cheek. Good morning, love. Did you not hear what the elf just said? I heard, he grumbled and opened his eyes to face her. I just don't want to go down there. Well, I can't, so you're going to have to. I know. He threw the blankets off of both of them, causing her to cry out. He quickly clamped a hand across her mouth before she started yelling at him. Don't. You can't yell at me for making you cold, Molly will hear you. And then where will we be? He laughed, as her eyes grew dark. She knew he was right, but that didn't mean she wouldn't be getting even later. He threw on a pair of sweatpants and headed for the stairs. It wasn't 10 seconds later that he came back in the bedroom door only to find Sissa standing there holding out his shirt. He kissed her cheek and smiled his lopsided grin as he pulled it over his head. "Thanks, love. Go on." She pushed him out the door. Not envying him in the slightest. She could hear the echoes of Molly Weasley's yelling from all the way up here, and she smiled to herself. As she got ready for the day. What was going to happen when Molly found out about her? Finally the yelling stopped and she heard the sound of feet coming slowly up the stairs. She was in the bathroom using magic to fix her hair when he leaned against the door jamb watching her. Well, she looked over her shoulder at him. How did it go? It certainly could have gone better. She thinks that I have Hermione hidden up here someplace, because she claims there was no answer at her apartment this morning. I'm guessing she either spent the night at the manor, or they were bright enough not to answer the door. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. But, I did take the time after she was gone to owl in sick to work today. And I took the rest of the week off. Christmas is in 2 days. And I want to spend time here with you. Not worrying about tracking down some lawbreaker. She locked eyes with him in the mirror, and smiled but her face quickly turned serious. Harry, you have a responsibility at work. You can't just decide not to go in because you don't feel like it. He shrugged. It's Christmas, and besides they aren't going to fire me. I'm Harry Potter. She raised her eyebrow at him. That, young man, does not mean that they cannot fire you. It just means that you should set a better example. Sissa, I could support us for years with all of my inheritance. And you yourself are not poor. You don't work, why are you lecturing me? I choose not to work, I have never neglected a job enough to get fired. He rolled his eyes and pulled her with him towards the door. Come on, we aren't going anywhere special today, you don't have to do your hair, and Creature was making cinnamon buns. She laughed, but allowed herself to be pulled downstairs. Over the course of the next couple of days the normally dark house became more and more festive. Hermione and Sissa had taken it upon themselves to decorate nearly every inch of the place. And there was a pile of presents under the tree so tall that Teddy wouldn't be able to see over them. Christmas Day dawned bright and early, and to Sissa's surprise she was met with her son and Hermione in their pajamas in the kitchen. Hey guys, what are you doing here so early? Oh, we snuck in last night and slept here. That way all of the gifts would be here before Teddy got here. Just in case. She kissed the top of her son's head as she passed him. Well, I think that's lovely, but why didn't you tell us? You could have come earlier. Oh, he told Harry. Hermione smiled. Your present is in the library, by the way. You told Harry so that you could sneak my present in. Yup. Draco got out of his seat and pulled his mother to her feet, dragging her behind him just like every kid on Christmas morning. When they got there at first she was confused, nothing looked out of place, but then Hermione pointed up. The entire ceiling of the room had changed. Much in the same way that the enchanted family tree worked. The map of the night sky was keyed into the current generations of the Black family. With a wave of her wand she could see every member of her family, and was surprised to see Harry's face there alongside her own. What's going on in here? Andromeda's voice broke through to her sister and Narcissa swung around. My Christmas present. She pointed to the sky, which was now reflecting Andromeda and Teddy's faces back down at them. A star map, of us. Oh, how nice. She caught sight of Draco and Hermione standing behind her sister. I take it this was your present, Draco. Well, yeah, but it was Hermione's idea. She thought Mom would like it. And she was right. I love it. Her gaze swept the two behind her before she refocused on her sister and her nephew. Come here you. She wrapped the little boy in a hug and spun him in a circle, only to have him call out for Harry over her shoulder. She set him on the ground and laughing the toddler made his way to his uncle. Harry stood framed in the doorway, one Kingsley Shacklebolt standing right behind him. Hey buddy. He swept him off of the floor and stage whispered loud enough so that everyone could hear. Do you want to help me make Aunt Sissa angry? The toddler nodded, obviously thinking that this was going to be some game. Instead Harry came up next to her and whispered in the boy's ear what to say. Smiling Teddy turned in Harry's arms to face Sissa. Uncle Harry isn't an Auror anymore. What? Her eyes grew wide and she took a step back. Why not? Well, you told me not to get fired, so I quit. I don't love it there. And I need to be doing something that I love. Well, she laughed darkly, resigning herself to fate. Don't think you are staying home with me all day. With you. Kingsley finally stepped into the room. Why would he stay with you? You don't live here. Sissa's eyebrows shot almost to her hairline and she rounded on Andromeda. Andromeda drew a tonks. He doesn't know. You didn't tell him why you were having Christmas lunch here. Andromeda looked at the floor. No, I thought that you wanted to tell people yourselves. I didn't realize that you expected me to tell him. Wait. Her eyes came up to meet her sisters. Who all are you telling tomorrow? The Weasleys, McGonagall and Hagrid, that is if your guest list hasn't changed. Told them what? Kingsell. Y was looking back and forth between the two witches, trying to figure out exactly what was going on. Instead of answering, Harry set Teddy on the floor and swept Sissa into a deep kiss, something that they normally stayed away from in public. Whoa. Kingsley's eyes got big, but Andromeda grabbed his arm. It's okay, they don't usually act like that. Harry just hates telling people that he's fallen in love with my sister. So he's taken to showing them. She coughed loudly and the pair pulled apart. Need I remind you that there is a toddler present, and that there will be no kissing like that tomorrow? Nope. Harry dashed over and pecked her on the cheek. I remember. I'll keep my lips to myself. You had better. That afternoon everyone left layered down with packages and presents. It was proving to be a rather splendid Christmas. The joy continued the following day. Andromeda had asked that everyone arrive by noon so that they could get settled and ready to eat by 1. To her surprise, it was Harry and Narcissa that were the last to arrive. Everyone knew that they were expecting Harry and someone else, but only the family knew that it was Sissa. The rumors that Harry and Ginny were now both seeing other people had reached Hogwarts, and Minerva was just as desperate as some of her students to find out what had happened to the pair. To say that the glimpse of blonde hair at the front door was a surprise was an understatement. Wand-drawn McGonagall approached Narcissa. What are you doing here, Ms. Black? She swallowed and then smiled. I'm bringing the pudding. Sorry that we are running late. Hagrid's gift got misplaced, but Kingsley flowed and said that it had made it over here in a bunch of Teddy's gifts from yesterday. Minerva was confused. What? No, I mean, why are you here? It was that moment that Hermione came rushing into the hall. Professor, what are you doing? She got between Sissa and the headmistress. Why are you holding Sissa at one point when the pudding is getting warm? The youngest of the three witches hurried Sissa past McGonagall and into the kitchen just as Harry came through the front door. Sorry, Andy, he called out as he took in the very flummoxed-looking McGonagall standing before him. Professor. He nodded as he hung up his coat. Did Sissa make it all right? She left with the pudding when I was getting my coat. All Minerva could do was stare. It was Draco that came to the rescue. Hey Harry. They exchanged smiles, and Draco passed Harry Teddy. Mom made it. She's in the kitchen with Aunt Andy and my own. Great, thanks. He started off down the hall carrying Teddy, but then he turned back. Professor, are you all right? She shook her head. I don't think so. Andromeda and Kingsley is one thing, that even makes sense. Mr. Malfoy and Ms. Granger is odd, but I can see how they would make a good pair. You and the youngest Ms. Black, however. She continued shaking her head, but followed him down the hall. It's okay. You'll get used to it. He changed trajectory and headed for the living room where Hagrid was waiting with the Bill and Fleur. Victory was playing upstairs with Luna and Neville. Used tear what? He smiled when he saw Harry. But the smile disappeared as soon as Narcissa stepped into the room behind him. Used to me. She pecked Harry on the cheek and took her place under his arm. She just found out that we are together. There was a collective silence in the room, until Fleur started laughing. When she locked eyes with Bill, he started too, and suddenly the entire room was laughing. Fleur, being the first to start, was also the first to compose herself. It's just that Ari and Hermione both missed dinner yesterday, and Molly was so angry. Seeing them here, happy, is a relief. Harry raised his glass to her and pulled Sissa even closer. Happy Christmas, everyone. It didn't take until all of the snow had melted before Sissa was starting to find herself getting annoyed with the fact that Harry was no longer working. Instead, he was there all the time. When he was reading or relaxing, she didn't mind. It was just like it had always been when he came home from work, but it was the other times. The times when he found himself growing bored, those were starting to drive her mad. Cooped up together in the house was not going to work out for them, but she wasn't sure how she was going to bring it up to Harry. She knew that he was happy with the way things were now and she didn't want to take that happiness away from him. She looked up as the door to the study opened. "I have an idea." He sat on the corner of her desk so that she focused on him instead of the letter she had been writing. "Oh, what's that?" She looked up at him, and he could see the beads of hope in her eyes. No matter how hard she had tried to hide it from him, he knew that she was getting annoyed. "I know now what it is that I want to do. I want to develop a defensive system that is better than what we were taught in school. I want to combine Muggle defensive techniques with our magic, and create a program that will teach everyone to defend themselves against both kinds of attacks." He was Ulraya. Dai extremely excited about what he could come up with, but Sis's response wasn't what he was expecting. Her smile faltered a little. "That's wonderful, but it's just that, we don't need strong defense if there is no real threat to our society." She looked up at him. "Is there?" "No." He crouched down in front of her so that he could look up into her eyes. "Narcissa, I promise you, you are safe. I won't let anything happen to you, or anyone in this family." "I know." She cupped his cheek in her hand and smiled. "If this is really what you want, then by all means, don't let me stop you." She laughed and then she stopped to face him again. "Darling, do you know Muggle hand-to-hand combat?" His smile faltered a little and she chuckled. "I thought not. Luckily I know someone who does." And with a swish of her cloak as she rounded the door she was gone. Harry was left standing in the study utterly lost. She had up and left without a word as to where she was going, or whom she was contacting. The sound of a child's laughter was enough to bring him out of his thoughts. "Aunt Sissa." He heard Teddy squeal and then the patter of footsteps coming down the hall. "Uncle Harry." The boy bounded into his arms. "What are you doing here, little man?" "He came with me." Sissa had followed the toddler back into the room. His grandmother was just changing into something more suitable. She held her arms out and Teddy leaned away from Harry towards her. "What do you mean more suitable?" Instead of answering, she nodded towards the door where Andy stood in workout clothes, wrapping her hair into a tight bun. "All right, Potter. My sister says you want to learn Muggle self-defense." Harry stood there dumbfounded. He looked at Andromeda for a long time, and then he turned to the blonde clutching his godson. "You left and went and got Andromeda." She chuckled and he turned back to her sister. "And you know Muggle self-defense?" "Yes. I've lived in the Muggle world since I was 17 years old, I know self-defense." "Sissa says you want to learn, and I'm offering to teach you." "Teach me? You can teach me." By this point Narcissa's chuckle had given way to laughter. "Harry, where did you think Nymphadora learned to fight like that? It surely wasn't her father." "I guess that makes sense, but Andromeda, I can't ask you to." "Nonsense. I spend the majority of my time with a 4-year-old. I could use a little hand-to-hand combat." "All right." She walked around him in a slow circle and then whipped her wand from the holster on her left forearm. "First things first. This outfit will never do, workout clothes are a must." She summoned some Harry's dresser as Sissa quietly led Teddy out of the study. 2 hours later Harry was lying flat on his back in the transformed study, and Andromeda was standing over him. "That was crazy." The brunette laughed as she helped him to his feet. "That was nothing. That was just day one. Not to mention you haven't even begun to work on magical defense yet. Dueling is going to hit you just as hard." Harry groaned. Working with Andy was hard enough, and it wasn't like he was out of shape. Dueling was going to be a nightmare. "I don't even have a dueling partner yet. So I have to find one of those first." "Oh yes you do. You have a couple in fact." Narcissa was one of the best dueler a Hogwarts had ever seen, at least until Hermione and Ginny came along. "I'm sure that she and Myone would both love to help." "Really? I knew Sissa was the brightest witch of your guys' age, but I didn't know she dueled." Andromeda laughed. "Oh yeah, she duels. She's better than Bella ever was." Quote, "I'm not that good." They looked up to see Sissa and Teddy both standing in the doorway, the former looking around with wide eyes. "What have you done to the study?" A flick of Andy's wand turned everything back to the way that it had been before. "You didn't actually expect me to teach him in the study, did you?" "Yes. Or the library, it has more room." I didn't expect you to totally change things in here. I had work on the desk. Where did that go?" Harry moved stiffly to the desk, and glanced down at the papers strewn across it. Everything you had earlier is still here, but you're right. We do need somewhere to practice that doesn't interrupt our daily lives. He picked up her calendar and started flipping through it. Your schedule is pretty light in the coming weeks. What do you say to a remodel of this old place? It's your house, Harry, you can remodel it if you want to remodel it. She laughed when he ducked his head, obviously forgetting that he was an adult. And that everything surrounding them belonged to him. A grin split across his lips and he chuckled. I have an idea. He sauntered forward and wrapped her in his arms before kissing her slowly. Move in with me. What? She pulled away from him. You want me to actually move in here? Well, he shrugged, but he didn't let her escape his arms. You practically live here anyway. And I would love it if you would help me remodel the place to your tastes as well as my own. I want this to be your home, Narcissa. There were tears welling up in her eyes, and out of the corner of her eyes she saw Andromeda scoop Teddy up and disappear, leaving the two of them completely alone in the house. She smiled a watery smile up at him. I've never had anywhere to actually call my home. I went from living with my parents and at Hogwarts to living at the manor. And that place was never a home. I never got the chance to make it one. Her smile fell from her face as she got lost in memories of the past. But the pressure on her arms when he squeezed drew her eyes back up to his. I'm sorry. Her smile returned as he brushed his thumbs over her cheeks to dry her tears. You're waiting for an answer. It's all right, love. I can wait. He was holding her close to him, trying to give her the space she needed, but at the same time wishing she would just agree to stay. No, it was a whisper. And he was shocked when he looked down at her, but she leaned up and pressed her lips to his. I meant no, you can't wait. And I don't want you to. I'm saying yes. I will move in with you. Really? He couldn't keep the relief out of his voice. I was so nervous you were going to refuse. Saying that you needed to keep the manor, that you didn't want to rush this, that things were fine the way. She cut him off by sealing her lips to his again. Harry. Yeah. His eyes were closed and they had only pulled far enough apart to speak. Shut up. They didn't make it up the stairs to their bedroom. Instead, the next they found themselves curled up together on the floor in the study when Creature popped in to tell them that dinner was ready. The next few weeks went as well as could be. Expected Andromeda was no longer beating Harry quite as terribly at hand-to-hand combat, and Narcissa had begun teaching him the proper ways to duel. By the beginning of February, and Narcissa's birthday, she had managed to completely change Grimmauld Place into a home that was comfortable for the two of them to live in. She had gotten rid of most of the darker elements of the place, and attempted to bring a bit of light and a bit of each of their personalities to the place. She still hadn't officially moved in with him. It was easier during the remodel for them to spend part of their time in the manor. But now it was her birthday. And instead of receiving a gift from Draco, she had informed him that she had one for him. The little party of four met for dinner in one of the nicer Muggle restaurants that Harry and Narcissa had begun to frequent in London. None of them were too keen on the entire wizarding world finding out about either one of their relationships. Happy birthday, Mother. Draco kissed her cheek as he and Hermione joined them at their table. Has it been a good one? She smiled and took Harry's hand under the table, an action neither of the other two missed. One of the best. She shook herself before she got carried away and turned to her son. I actually have a gift for you, Draco. But it's your birthday, we brought you something. She chuckled, which I will graciously accept, after I give you this. She pulled a dark, leather-bound sleeve from her bag and passed it across the table to him. When he opened it, his eyes grew wide and Narcissa and Harry couldn't help but smile. Are you serious, Mother? He looked up from the file and across at her. You're giving me the manor. I am, and as we sit here the elves are moving all of my things out. The place is yours, darling. Congratulations. Draco and Hermione exchanged a look and then the blonde man turned back to his mother. You're moving out. You don't have to move out, you are more than welcome to stay. In fact, I insist that you stay, Mother, please. Laughter came from his left and he looked to see Hermione covering her mouth with her hand. Draco, I think she's going to be just fine. I highly doubt that she would leave if she didn't have somewhere else to go. What? He looked at her incredulously before turning to Sissa. Where are you moving to, Mother? Harry spoke up for the first time since the other two had arrived. With me. She's moving in with me. I asked her a few weeks ago, and now that she has remodeled the place it is just as much her home as it is mine. Ooh, you remodeled? Hermione starting badgering Cissa with questions about what she had done to the house, and Draco and Harry were left to speak alone. Harry. He looked up from the menu as Draco called for his attention. Yes. Did you really ask her to move in with you? He looked across to where his mother and his girlfriend were talking excitedly about something that she had done to change the place. This isn't some sort of joke. You actually want her to be there all the time. She's there all the time anyway. If it weren't for the remodel neither one of us would have been at the manor at all since Christmas. He sighed and looked at the other man. Are you okay with this? With her and I becoming even more serious. Draco thought it over for a minute and then he smiled. You make her happy, and I think she's good for you too. She made you grow up a bit more, but you also relax around her. I want to know one thing, Potter. Harry, who had been looking across at the women, jerked his eyes back to Draco when he had called him Potter. What's that? Do you love her? Harry locked his gaze with Draco's and nodded. Yes, I love her. Then I have one more question. He let his gaze drift back across the table. How long are you going to hide her away? Excuse me. Harry was startled. What kind of question was that? I'm not hiding her away. You are. You don't want the wizarding world, her world, your world, our world, to know about the two of you. That's hiding, Potter, no matter how you look at it. Harry sighed. You're right. I know, I'm just scared. I can handle the bad press. I can deal with having people call me names, and treat me different. But I don't want that for her. I want to protect her. I want her to feel safe, to feel like she can do anything. You already give her all of that. And you might be surprised to find that she is tougher than she looks. Harry laughed. Oh, that I know. Then stop hiding her away. I think the world may be ready. Harry nodded. Soon. It'll be ready soon. February came and went, and Harry and Narcissa were settling comfortably into their new lives. Living together hadn't changed much of anything, except that now she felt comfortable calling Grimmauld home. And Lottie had moved in as well, so that she didn't have to keep traveling back and forth from the manor. Draco hadn't minded in the end that Cissa had moved in with Harry. In fact, both he and Hermione had been helping Harry with his new defense scheme. It had become a family affair, and even Kingsley had approved when Andromeda had told him what Harry was up to. Few people knew that Harry and Cissa were, in fact, living together. They hadn't even told all of their friends, knowing that it would spark some serious questions about their relationship. True people. He had accepted that they were seeing each other. There wasn't much that they could do to stop that, but neither one of them were quite sure what was going to happen when people found out that they had taken things a step further. They got their first real taste of what others would think early one Thursday morning. Ever since Molly had come bursting into the house before Christmas, Cissa had wanted to put some sort of security lock on the flow. During the remodel she had charmed it so that if you weren't keyed into the wards that she had set up, the flow would magically deposit you on the front steps instead of in the kitchen. When they heard the sharp rap of knuckles on the door that morning, both of their gazes shot up and they locked eyes over their coffee cups. Lottie. The elf popped up at Narcissa's elbow. Will you get the door, please? Yes, mistress. Where should I be taking the guests, mistress? She looked up at Harry and he shrugged, not knowing whom it was. The library will be fine, and remember, no one must know mistress lives here. Yes, mistress, Lottie knows. Thank you, Lottie. The elf bowed and with a pop she was gone. Seconds later they heard the sound of the front door opening and someone traipsing along behind the elf up the stairs. Creature. The second elf arrived moments later at Harry's side. Yes, master. Can you tell me who Lottie just led to the library and why they are here? Of course, master. One moment, please. He disappeared and both Harry and Cissa sat in complete silence as they waited for the elf to return. A slight pop to the right of Narcissa caused them both to jump. Master and mistress, it is the youngest Mr. Weasley. He is saying he is wanting to speak with both of yous and wanting to apologize to mistress. Harry sat stunned, and then got up and headed for the door without saying a word. Cissa was quick on her feet to follow him, but turned just as she reached the door. Thank you, creature. Of course, mistress. The elf b-o'd as the hem of her robe swished out of sight around the corner. When the door to the library opened, Ron turned around quickly, making sure he was ready for any attack that may have been headed his way. Before he could even think though, he saw his wand fly through the air straight into Harry's waiting hand. "What are you doing here, Ron? I want to talk. I owe you, and more importantly Narcissa, an apology. I was an ass. And there is no way around that. What makes you think that she is here, and what makes you think that she is going to accept your apology now? It's been months, what suddenly made you change your mind?" Ron was momentarily stunned. "Wait, is she not here? I just assumed that she would be. You guys seemed like you were at the sleepover stage before," he trailed off. The woman in question swept through the door behind Harry. "What can we do for you, Mr. Weasley?" Her voice was calm and cool, much like it had been years before. Her mask was firmly in place, and he hadn't suspected anything else. He had, after all, been terribly cruel to her the last time he had been in her company. "I have come to beg for your forgiveness, Ms. Black." He took a step towards her, but Harry got between them. "I don't think so. You don't get any closer to her." Sissa's hand on his arm stopped him, and he turned to look at her. With a slight shake of her head he relented and let her sweep around him to stand in front of his former best friend. "Ronald, I have told you before you may call me Narcissa. Now, what is it that you are seeking my forgiveness for?" He looked at her and seemed to get lost in looking at her momentarily before he regained himself and began to apologize again. "I want to apologize for the way I acted the last time I was here. I said some things to you. And about you that I never should have said. They are false, and they were cruel. I also wish to seek your permission to locate your son, so that I may apologize to him as well." He was looking at the floor as he spoke and he found himself shocked when her hand came under his chin and she forced him to meet her eyes. "What was it that caused you to change your mind and come seeking my forgiveness now?" "I realized that I was being selfish and stubborn, and plain mean. You have done nothing wrong, and anyone with eyes can see that you love Harry, and he you. It was a stupid decision on my part to try and come between you. I'm afraid that I may have been jealous of you." He was finding it difficult to speak with her hand forcing him to look her in the eye. "Jealous? What were you jealous of?" There was a gleam in her eye that he didn't think he had seen before, but from Harry's position over his shoulder he could see that Sissa had already forgiven him, and was now just making him squirm. A little like a cat playing with a mouse. Or, in this case, a lion. That someone could take Harry away that easily. That you could so quick become the center of his world. He was with my sister for years and that never happened. I was jealous that you meant so much to him. He shrugged. "I know, stupid. I was being an ass, and I apologize." Sissa chuckled. "Well, I accept your apology for myself. As far as getting Draco and Hermione to accept your apologies, that's up to you. Besides," she nodded behind his back to where Harry was standing watching them, "I think there is someone else you need to talk to first." Ron turned and looked over his shoulder at Harry with a sheepish look on his face. "I'm really sorry, mate. If Narcissa can forgive me, can you?" A split-second pause said before a grin turned up at the corners of Harry's mouth. "You know what, if she accepts your apology then so do I. She is the one that you were hurting, not me. Just don't be an idiot in the future, alright?" He stuck out his hand and Ron took it. "Alright, I can do that. And if I am a jerk, I'll just set a lioness on you." Sissa slapped Harry's arm playfully, but she let the comment go. She was happy to see that her love had finally gotten his best friend back. March storms raised their heads that spring as Harry's new defensive system became more and more finalized. With Draco's help, final touches were being placed on the marketing strategies and Hermione had already laid all of the prep work for how the courses should be taught out. It was mid-March when they received another visitor that they were not expecting. Harry had gone into the ministry with Draco to work on getting some sort of permit that he needed to officially start up his training classes, when the sound of the wards signaling that someone was trying to flow in went off. Narcissa was standing in the front parlor, and so instead of calling an elf she went to the door herself. Deciding that if need be she would make up some excuse as to why she was there. When she pulled the door open, the last person she expected to see was Ginny Weasley. The girl on the front step took half a step back when the blonde witch opened the front door. She had come looking for Harry. Narcissa Black was not who she had considered being there to greet her. "Miss Weasley." Sissa nodded and stepped to the side, allowing Ginny room to pass her. "Won't you please come in?" After a moment's pause, Ginny nodded and stepped through the doorway past the older woman. She hadn't seen her since the ball almost a year ago now, and she was surprised to see that the youngest black sister looked better than she had then. She was lighter, and there was a light in her eyes that she didn't think she had ever seen before. "Thank you. The house looks wonderful. Did Harry redecorate?" Narcissa's laugh rang out behind her as she was shutting the door, and Ginny turned to face her. "No, I did. Harry didn't really want much to do with it. He let me have free rein to do whatever I thought was best. I think just about every room, with the exception of the elves' quarters, has been remodeled since the new year." "Wow." Ginny looked impressed. "Anyway, I'm sure you are wondering what I'm doing here, and actually I could say the same about you." She raised her eyebrows at the other woman. Sissa waved a hand in front of her and gestured for Ginny to lead the way down the hall. "Why don't we go into the library? Harry went to the ministry for something, I'm sure he will be back soon." "Oh, okay." She entered the library before she realizes that Narcissa had never told her why she was here. "Ms. Black." She smiled and waved a hand to dismiss her. "Please, it's Narcissa." "Okay, Narcissa it is then. You never answered my question. Why are you here when Harry isn't?" Narcissa moved across the room away from her, and still didn't answer. Instead she called out, "Creature." With a pop the elf appeared at her side. "Yes, mistress. Can you bring some tea please? And take Miss Weasley's coat as well." He bowed to her and turned to Ginny. "Your coat if you would please, miss." When she handed him the coat he turned and bowed to Narcissa and disappeared with a crack. "Mistress." Ginny hadn't missed what Creature had called Narcissa. "I was with Harry for 3 years and he never called me that. What makes you so different?" "Ah, I will answer both questions you have posed to me with one simple statement. And that is simply, I live here." Ginny turned from the fireplace, where she had wandered after Creature took her coat, to look at the woman sitting on the couch behind her. "You what? I live here. You didn't think he let me redecorate the house how I wanted simply because did you?" She sunk down in the armchair next to her. "I don't know what I thought." She looked up at the other woman. "If you live here, you are together then?" Sissa merely nodded, knowing the girls didn't really want to be interrupted. "That makes sense. I knew that he had stopped dating, and then there was Ron. He seemed so strange there for a while, he must have found out." "He did." Ginny was beginning to talk ever increasingly quickly. "And so Sissa was doing her best to stay completely calm. He found out back in November, and it turned out rather awfully in fact. Harry threw him out, and they didn't speak again until a couple of weeks ago when he came here and gave me a formal apology." She smiled. "Now I believe they are working on getting back to normal. I knew that they had had a falling out, we all did when Harry and Hermione decided not to come to Christmas. In fact, for a time I believed that they were together. I think my mother still may. Though that wouldn't be a relationship that either one of them would hide." She turned to look at the older woman full on. "Do you know whom Hermione is with?" "I do, but it's not my place." Ginny waved her off. "Of course, I would never ask you to betray that confidence. However," she smiled, "that won't stop me from asking questions of you." Slowly the two women began to grow comfortable in each other's company, both finding it surprisingly simply to talk to the other, sharing stories of Harry and little things that he had done with one, and not the other, and other little confidences that only women can share. When Harry arrived home later that afternoon, he was pleasantly surprised to hear the laughter that was coming from the library. He recognized Sissa's laughter without question, and the other sounded surprisingly familiar as well. His suspicions were confirmed when he caught sight of Ginny sitting across from her. "Well, what is going on in here? It seems that the two of you are having a good time." They both looked to the door when they heard his voice, their smiles never leaving their faces. Sissa rose and moved to the door to greet him. She pecked him on the cheek and pulled him further into the room. "We are. In fact we were telling stories about you, darling." "Me? That hardly seems fair. I wasn't even here to defend myself." He chuckled at how well they were getting along. He turned from her to look across at Ginny. "You seem to be taking this much better than your youngest brother did." She nodded. "I heard. It seems he was a right ass to Narcissa. I'm glad that he decided to pull it together. He wouldn't have made it much longer not speaking to you." She chuckled. I am angry with you though. She tried to school her features into some semblance of anger. Why didn't you tell me about her? You told almost half of the family, and you couldn't tell me. I haven't told half of your family. I told Ron, and I told Bill and Fleur, that's it. I didn't think that you would want to know. Harry, stop. She and Sissa were both outwardly laughing now. You were right, he did get rather worked up about it. I told you he wasn't going to think that it was funny. I know, but still, all right, now that he's here, I don't remember what I wanted to ask him in the first place. I should go, I've been here for hours. Of course, Sissa gracefully stood from the couch and moved to the door. I will go collect your coat, I have a feeling you may need it. Ginny rose and started to go after her, but Sissa waved her off. No please, I'll be right back. They both watched as the blonde swept from the room. Ginny, she turned to look across at him. I didn't know how to tell you. I love her, but I still didn't want you to think that. Harry, it's fine, I was joking before. I'm not angry that you didn't tell me, I understand. Mom on the other hand, probably won't be so understanding. Dad won't mind, she is his cousin after all, but Mom, well you thought Ron was upset. Sissa paused outside the door when she heard the serious tone of their voices as they floated through the space towards her. I'm worried about that, I know that Sissa can hold her own, but your mother, I don't know how to tell her. I know that. She's not going to approve and I don't want to put Sissa through that. It'll bring up a lot of hard memories for her, well for both of them. It's not something I want to do. Harry, if you don't telephone my mother, how do you think either one of them is going to feel? Mother is going to feel that you don't trust her, she is going to feel terrible, and Narcissa. If you don't do anything, what sort of future do you think that she's going to see? My mother is the closest thing you have to one. If you don't tell her, how is Narcissa supposed to see a future there? Sissa pushed the door open, effectively stopping their conversation. Neither one of them knew that she had been listening the entire time. Ginny quickly gave her goodbyes to both of them, and Sissa held it together behind her Ice Queen mask as she showed the younger woman out. When she shut the door behind her and turned to face Harry, she let the mask drop. A tear leaked out of the corner of her eye, and Harry was immediately there, wrapping her in the safety of his arms. Sissa, what's the matter? Why are you crying? I heard you talking to Ginny about Molly. She's right, you know. What kind of future do you expect us to have if we can't ever come out of the shadows? I love you, but I refuse to be hidden away as if you are ashamed of me. Harry, I can't do this. That woman is like a mother to you, you have to tell her if we Avenue any chance at making this work for the long haul. I know. He kissed her hair as he pulled her flush against him. I'm sorry, love. I want to tell her, I just don't know how. You saw how Ron reacted. I know that Molly will be even less supportive. I just don't want to see you get hurt. I'm stronger than you give me credit for, Mr. Potter. She leaned back to look him in the eyes. Please, I don't want to be in the shadows anymore. Quote. He pulled her flush against him once more. I know, I promise this will not go on forever, I love you. It was the week after Easter that Harry finally made up his mind. He was going to throw their relationship out in the open once and for all, in the grandest way he knew how. He was going to ask Narcissa Black to become Narcissa Potter. He planned everything out, using Teddy's birthday as an excuse to go shopping with Andromeda and leave his godson behind with Sissa. He went to Andy first, wanting both her help in choosing a ring and her approval. She was Sissa's only family left besides Draco, and Harry sure wasn't looking forward to asking him. She granted him both. He walked in the front door the same as he always did. The fact that it was a Wednesday afternoon was what threw her. Harry, what are you doing here? And why are you smiling like that? I need to talk to you. He sat down in the kitchen chair across from her. I assumed as much when you came bursting in on a Wednesday. Quote. Sorry. He looked down sheepishly. He knew somewhere in the back of his mind that he should have Flo called or something so that he knew she wasn't busy, but in the moment all he had wanted to do was finalize his plan, and for that he needed to talk to her without chancing Sissa interrupting. I want to ask you for your permission to marry Narcissa. Andy's eyes went wide for a second. But she stopped her mouth from falling open. You are asking me to marry my sister. Well, besides Draco, you are her only family. I just wanted to make sure I had your blessing. She smiled at him and took his hand across the table. Of course. I think it's about time. She watched him closely for a second. There is something else, isn't there? Harry grinned. Yeah. Would you help me with the ring? I think it will be best if I have a woman's opinion, and I would ask Hermione, but I think that you and Sissa may share a more similar taste. I think you're right about that. Hermione is sweet, but her tastes are a little more modern than ours, that is for sure. I would be honored to help you pick out my sister's engagement ring. Thanks, Andromeda. He got up. ND pecked her on the cheek as he headed for the door. I'll you with details. Okay. And Harry, she called out just as he turned the corner to the hall. When he poked his head back around the door, she smiled. If you're going to be my brother, I think you have earned the right to call me Andy. He smiled and gave her one last wave as she disappeared out the front door with a little pop. Talkie. To Draco, on the other hand, was another story. After he and Andy had talked, he had gone by the manor to see him. At the door he was met with a smiling Hermione, who told him to wait in Draco's study while she went and found him. They came in together, and a pointed look from both men told Hermione that this was exactly the conversation she knew had been coming for a while. For his part, Draco was much more cooperative than Harry thought he was going to be. In fact, he gave Harry his support in his asking for his mother's hand. Harry had a suspicious feeling that Hermione may have been having a bigger influence on Draco than the other man was letting on. It was with a smile and a handshake that he sent him on his way. When Harry left, Hermione joined him in the study. Well, he looked up at her and smiled, knowing exactly what she was asking, but deciding to tease her anyway. Well, what, my dear? He smirked at her huffiness. She moved so that she was standing behind him, and she wrapped her arms around his shoulders. You know exactly what I'm talking about. What did Harry have to say? He just had a question. She slapped the back of his head gently. I know he had a question, you ass. I wanted to know what that question was. He reached around behind him with one arm and wrapped it around her waist, pulling her to sit directly on his lap, and he smiled down at her. You already know what he wanted to ask me. You've been talking about the fact that they should just get married for weeks. Her shriek of delight made him chuckle as she wrapped her arms around his neck and snuggled into the crook of his neck. Her next words were mumbled, but they were so in sync with each other that he understood her anyway. I'm guessing you gave him your permission. I did more than that. He bent his chin down and planted a kiss among her soft, brown curls. I gave him my blessing. She jerked away from him, a wide smile tugging at her lips. You did. He lifted her chin up with his index finger and smiled. I did. And he sealed his promise with a searing kiss. There wasn't much time between Harry talking to Draco and Andromeda and the trip he had planned for the weekend. Hence Saturday rolled around. Teddy was more than happy to stay with his aunt for a time, and Sissa wasn't the least bit suspicious of the two of them shopping for Teddy's birthday. She had no idea that it was something they had never done before. She hadn't been around for the last couple of birthdays. Harry couldn't help the grin on his face when they made it out of the house scot-free. Andromeda couldn't help but laugh at the young man's obvious anxiousness. You know that she is going to say yes, right? He across at her suddenly. Sissa. She's going to say yes to you. I don't think I've ever seen her more happy than she is when she is with you. She will agree to marry you. Yeah. He stopped trying to contain his smile and let it take over his features. That's what Draco said too. I went and asked his permission as well. You did? She seemed shocked. How did that go? Better than I thought it was going to. I think Hermione may have had something to do with that though. I bet it's not long before something more happens there as well. She's practically moved into the manor, and even the house elves are calling her mistress. Andromeda chuckled, to think what would Lucius would say if he could see all of this now. His proper pure-blooded wife living with the boy who lived, and on the verge of getting engaged to him, his perfectly molded son falling in love with a muggleborn. And his well-trained house elves calling her mistress and respecting her wishes in his cold manner. Harry laughed as he opened the door to the leaky cauldron and let her pass through in front of him. I think he may just keel over right where he stood. Well, neither one of them would miss him. She moved swiftly through the pub and pulled the back door open, this time allowing him to exit first and open the archway into the alley. They walked in silence towards Gringotts, and just as they were about to climb the steps in order to gain access to Harry's vault, Andy's hand on his arm stopped their progress. He turned to look at her and the seriousness of her expression caused his heart to stop beating for one moment. Harry, this is my baby sister that you are going in there to pick out a diamond for. And if you ever do anything, I mean anything to her, I swear. She was cut off when he pulled her to him in a hug. I'm glad she has you back, Andy. She needs you, and I promise that I will never hurt her, even a fraction. I wouldn't hurt a hair on her head. I love her. She pulled away from him and took his elbow as they climbed the steps up to the grand marble building. I know. And she loves you too. But remember, you are marrying a black. Be ready for that. He laughed as he handed his key to the goblin and they headed for his vault. I know. I'm about to make her a lady twice over. Miss Black will become Lady Potter Black, and I'm sure that I will never be ready for the wrath should I have to endure it. They spent the next hour or so going over some of the finer stones in the Potter and Black vaults, selecting a few pieces from each to have set for Narcissa's ring. They left Gringotts Harry's pocket heavy with a pretty diamond and a couple shiny emeralds from the Black vault, and a few glittering red rubies from the Potter one. Harry insisted on going into Muggle London to have the stones set. Together they picked out a ring and a setting that they were sure she would love. A white gold band that was delicate enough for Sis's small hands, and yet sturdy enough to hold all of the gems that they had selected. Harry paid quite a bit extra to the jeweler and they were informed the ring would be finished within the hour. Harry treated them to lunch in a cafe close by, and shortly they returned to the jeweler's. When the ring was presented to them, Andy couldn't help the tears that sprung to her eyes. Sissa was going to love it. The jeweler, noticing Andy's reaction, smiled. Would you like to try it on, ma'am? What? Andy shook her head and looked over at Harry, who looked just as stunned. And she began to laugh. The ring isn't for me. He's proposing to my little sister. Oh. The jeweler looked back and forth between them, obviously embarrassed. Forgive me. You two just seemed so comfortable together. That's all right. Harry threw an arm around Andy's shoulder as he took the ring. We are just good friends. No problem. He put the ring in his pocket and let go of Andy as he headed for the door. Thank you. Of course, sir. Once they were outside, Andy couldn't contain her laughter anymore. She had been holding back inside, but out here was a different story. I can't believe she thought I was the one marrying you. Where would the fun be in designing my own ring? Harry shot her a look and smiled as they headed towards a deserted alley to apparate back to Grimmauld. I'll be sure to tell Kingsley. Heard her shriek as he spun on the spot and disappeared, only to reappear seconds later on his own front step. He let himself in and left. The door opened behind him so that she could follow him. He knew he would pay for his comment later, but it was worth the look on her face in the moment. She was still fuming as she followed him to the library door, where he stood leaning against the frame watching her younger sister sit cross-legged on the floor playing with her grandson. Harry couldn't help but smile at the sight in front of him, his proper, dignified witch rolling around on the floor with a soon-to-be 4-year-old. He hadn't thought that he could possibly fall deeper in love with her, but seeing her with Teddy did him in every time. He had planned on asking her at the perfect, candlelit, romantic moment, but standing there in that doorway, watching her, he didn't think he wanted to wait another minute. Teddy. Harry CALLED for his godson's attention, and both the toddler and Sissa turned around to look at Harry. When the child ran to him, Sissa set about cleaning up some of the toys that they had scattered throughout the room. When Harry scooped Teddy up, he grinned. Do you want to help Uncle Harry with something? The little boy nodded, not understanding what was going to happen in the next few minutes. Harry LLED the ring out of his pocket, and after pulling it from the box he put it in Teddy's hand. He set the boy on the floor and whispered, Go tell Aunt Sissa you have a present for her. Okay. He hurried across the room towards his aunt. As Andromeda watched from the hall, Harry leaned back against the doorframe as the toddler pulled on his aunt's skirt. Aunt Sissa, I have a present for you. You do. She turned and crouched down in front of him. She was expecting something small and inconsequential. Just that morning he had brought her a dead spider and a tiny flower petal. She suspected this was something along the same lines. Okay. She held out her hand and couldn't help the gasp when the object that hit her palm was a ring. There were tears in her eyes as she scooped Teddy up off the floor. The ring clutched tightly in her right fist. She turned to look at Harry, who was still leaning casually in the doorway, a cocky grin on his face as he watched her walk towards him. Once she Reached a few feet in front of him, he dropped to one knee. I may as well as you properly. He took the hand that wasn't supporting Teddy and held on to it as he continued. Narcissa Black, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? She smiled through her tears as he looked up at her. Here she was, the pinnacle of status and grace, barefoot, hair a mess, holding a toddler on her hip, and he was asking her to marry him. She smiled and nodded, yes. Yes, I will marry you. He took Teddy from her and set him on the ground, where the boy ran to his grandmother, who had come into the room behind Harry. Really, you're saying yes? She smiled up at him and opened her hand so that he could take the ring from her. Really? I want to marry you, Harry Potter. He slid the ring onto her finger and grinned when it was a perfect fit. Beautiful, just like you. Silent tears were still streaming down her cheeks as she looked up from her new ring to her new fiancé. I love you. He cupped her face in his hands and used his thumbs to wipe away her tears. I love you too. The kiss was slow and deep. So intimate that Andromeda slipped quietly from the room, carrying Teddy with her towards the flow. Grandma, why was Aunt Cissa crying? She smiled down at her grandson, tears swimming in her own eyes, because Teddy, Aunt Cissa and Uncle Harry are going to change the world. Really? His eyes went wide. Harry. She rolled over so that she was facing him on the bed. Her fingers tracing lazy patterns on his chest. Harry. His arms wrapped tighter around her slender waist as he pulled her flush against him. Yes, dear. We have to get up. You told Hermione that we would join them for breakfast this morning, and as much as I would like to torture my son by showing up late and engaged, we need to get going. I vote for torturing him. That way we can stay in bed longer. He cut off her protests by kissing her, slowly working his way down her neck to the hollow spot right above her collarbone. He placed sloppy, wet, open-mouthed kisses there before blowing softly on her skin, causing shivers to course through her body. Cissa laughed and pushed him off of her, climbing quickly out of the bed before he could capture her in his embrace again. Come on you. She picked up his boxers from the previous day and threw them at him. Get out of bed and find the rest of our things from yesterday. We can't just leave our clothes strung through the house. He pulled the boxers from his head where they had landed and swung his feet over the edge of the bed, following her into the bathroom. Why not? It's our house. Quote, because we are civilized. She swatted him with her hairbrush before using magic to set her hair and makeup for the day. He watched her in the mirror as they both readied themselves for their morning out. He was done long before she was, and with a peck to her cheek he headed down to find some coffee before they left. When she joined him downstairs he smiled. He loved her in jeans and today she was wearing the same outfit that she had worn for their first date. Dark jeans, emerald blouse and silver accents, her new ring fit in the ensemble perfectly. He met her at the door and took her hand in his. He lifted it to his lips and kissed each of her knuckles. Pausing longer at her ring finger than any of the others. I have the most beautiful fiancé in the world. She laughed. Let's go, handsome. She tried to pull her hand away, but he twined his fingers through hers, tugging her with him as they appeared in a deserted alley behind the cafe they had agreed upon. Harry dropped her hand and snuck his arm around her waist as they headed for the main entrance. When they stepped through the door they immediately caught sight of the other couple sitting near one of the windows. They slipped into the other side of the booth. Good morning, you two. Good morning, mother, Harry. Draco nodded at them and shot Harry a look asking if he had asked for Cissa's hand yet. He smiled when he saw Harry lean down and whisper in his mother's ear, and she casually lifted her hands from under the table and placed them in plain view. Narcissa. Hermione reached out across the table and grabbed the older woman's hand. That is gorgeous. She lifted Cissa's hand so that she could look closer at the ring. It blends both you perfectly. Cissa's laughter rang out as Hermione finally relinquished her hand. The brunette turned to Harry. It really is wonderful. Where did you get it? It's one of a kind, handmade just for her. He smiled proudly when Cissa gasped. He hadn't told her that yet. You didn't tell me that. You had it made. Of course. I got the gems out of the vaults, Potter rubies, and a black diamond and emeralds. Then Andy and I went to a Muggle jeweler and she helped me with the setting. I was going to ask Hermione, but I figured Andy's taste would be closer. She kissed his cheek lightly, and settled into an easy conversation about weddings with Hermione. Leaving the two men to themselves. Well, Potter, welcome to the family. Draco's smile came easier than either one of them ever thought it would. Thanks, I was already the head of the family though. He chuckled. I don't think she's realized yet that she's going to be a lady again. Lady Potter Black in fact. Draco laughed. Oh Merlin, marrying a black is supposed to be challenging enough. Let alone making one the Lady Black, especially one that can magically become a lion with a single thought. Oh believe me, you're not telling me anything I haven't already thought of. He looked over at the two women as his mind drifted. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. He came back to himself and shot a cocky grin at Draco. What about you? He nodded towards Hermione. Your mother isn't the only Spitfire as this table. True, but at least Hermione doesn't turn into a lion. He chuckled for a moment, and then he grew serious. Even less people know about the two of us than know about the two of you. You guys are going to cause a real stir. I think we will wait and sneak in on the back of that. His eyes fell on his brilliant witch. I really do love her though. She's going to be a part of this family too. She already is. When Draco looked back at him he smiled. Anyone that can put up with you for this long I consider family. They settled into a comfortable silence when the food arrived. And it wasn't until they were all finished that Draco spoke again. So, when do I start calling you Dad Potter? Harry choked on his water, but Draco started laughing. I'm kidding. I'm not going to call you Dad, you're younger than I am. I am curious as to when the two of you are planning on making it all official. Harry looked across at Sissa for help. I was thinking June. She looked at Hermione who pondered for a moment and then nodded her agreement. Late June I think would work well. That way the hullabaloo of the ball has died down, and Draco's birthday is over. But Harry's isn't for another month. Late June would be perfect. Late June also allows us to make our relationship public at the ball, and let some of the chaos calm before we expect them to attend the ceremony peacefully. She looked to Harry for his approval and he draped his arm around her shoulders. Sounds perfect. He glanced at his watch. I have to go, I'm still on the committee for the ball and we have a meeting this morning. That's fine, Hermione has to work. She smiled across at her son. Draco, would you mind escorting me to Diagon Alley? There are some things I would like to look at before I start planning a wedding. Of course, mother. The little group stood and prepared to go their separate ways when Harry caught her arm. Wait, he grabbed a napk in a pen off the counter and wrote something on it. He handed it to Sissa with a smile. Take this to Gringotts, and try not to bankrupt us, okay? He laughed and pecked her cheek before following Hermione out the door and disappearing from sight. She looked down at the note in her hand and smiled. She handed it across to Draco and laughed at the look on his face. You seem shocked, my dear. He just gave you access to the entirety of his fortune. I don't even want to think about how much money that is. Add that to the money you already have, and I don't think you could bankrupt the two of you if you shopped for a century. She took his arm and led him outside, quietly whisking them away with a faint pop. The rest of April came and went. Harry helped to plan the 4th annual memorial ball. And Sissa was secretly planning their wedding. It was the day before the ball when the reality of the situation seemed to really hit her. She came out of their bathroom holding up the dress that she had bought for the next day. Are you sure this is okay? Showing up in green seems a little presumptuous. Shouldn't I try and blend in or something? We are going to cause enough of a fuss without me wearing this. Hey, he stepped across the room towards her and wrapped her in his arms. I don't care what they say. I will marry you at the end of next month, and I will walk into that ball with you on my arm tomorrow. You are the love of my life and I don't intend for that to be a secret any longer. Are you sure? She looked up at him, her clear, blue eyes conveying every aspect of fear. I don't want this too. Hey, he put his finger under her chin so that she couldn't look away. I don't care. We will have each other and we will have our family. There is nothing that is going to change that. Now pick out whatever you want to wear, and do your hair however you like. For all I care you can go in jeans and a ponytail. Her laughter made him smile. He was glad that she was starting to relax. You just like me in jeans and a ponytail. Yeah. He bent and kissed her soft and slow. I do. Now are you coming to bed? Of course. She took a step forward causing the back of his knees to collide with their bed. Do you like these earrings? Harry didn't even look up from the book he was reading. I do. You want to even look at them first. He pushed his glasses further up along his nose. but still didn't look up at her. Are they new? No. There was a tiny pout on her lips, but she didn't give it away with her voice. You've worn them before. Yes. She was growing. I am patient with him at this point because he still hadn't looked at her. Then I love them. Harry. What? He finally set the book to the side and looked at her. He had to take a moment to appreciate her. She looked beautiful in the form-fitting, emerald silk, covered in glittering diamonds. You are stunning. Thank you. I'll be ready in 2 minutes. She took off for the bathroom and he suppressed a chuckle. Take your time. He picked his book back up and went back to reading. Passive aggression is not going to get me out the door any faster. Sissa, I gave up on getting you out the door months ago. Plus it's a huge party, no one is going to notice if we are a few hours late. Harry Potter. We are not going to be a few hours late. She came storming out of the bathroom to stand in front of him. I'm ready. He stood smoothly and with his smirk in place extended his hand for her to take. Well then, come my dear. Let us set the world on fire. He led her down the stairs and to the fireplace. That's what I'm afraid of. The roar of the flames drowned her words out as the green tendrils surrounded them. When they came out in the main entrance of the school, Sissa set about writing her ensemble before she turned her wand on Harry. He couldn't help noticing that the light all around her seemed to glitter as it played off of her diamond accents. When she had finished, he took her hand in his and brought her engagement ring to his lips. With a smile and a gentle kiss to her cheek, he tucked her hand away in the crook of his arm and led her towards the solid oak doors of the great hall. The doors swung open as they approached and it seemed as though every eye in the place turned towards them in that moment. A hush fell over the crowd as they took in the sight before them. EY had found out the rumors that Harry Potter and Ginny Weasley weren't together anymore were true earlier when the latter had arrived unaccompanied. Yet very few were prepared for the sight before them. Harry Potter had arrived with a date, and for a moment no one could place her. The gorgeous blonde woman that seemed to sparkle with every step she took. Finally someone recognized her and within seconds the room was buzzing with the sounds of hundreds of voices. Harry Potter had shown up with Narcissa Black on his arm. Whispers followed them as they made their way through the crowd to where Draco and Hermione were standing with some of their friends. Andy wrapped Sissa in a hug and pulled back with a bright smile on her face. And I thought that we got stares and whispers when Kingsley and I showed up together. We always said that you two would upstage us all. Her sister's clever banter was enough to change the fake smile Sissa had plastered to her face to a genuine one. True. Can why? Oh, you imagine what our mother would have said about this. Something along the lines of how it was about time the two of you brought some good publicity to the family name. McGonagall chuckled as she came over to greet Harry and Narcissa. I'm afraid the two of you may have caused quite the fuss with that entrance. That's all right. Harry appeared at Narcissa's elbow. We can handle it. He looked around. I'm actually surprised no has confronted us yet. You're not going to have to wait long. Hermione pointed over Narcissa's shoulder to where Molly Weasley was parting the crowd on her way towards them. Harry couldn't help but grin. He should have known that she would be the first one to speak up. She was fuming by the time she reached them, her emotions causing her to visibly shake his ass. He tried to formulate her thoughts into words. What are you doing coming in with the likes of her? She pointed a finger at Narcissa and Harry started to step in front of her, but she stopped him with a light squeeze of his wrist. How can you come waltzing in here with the wife of a Death Eater on your arm and expect that we will all just accept it? Sissa could feel Harry becoming angry beside her, and tried to speak before he could, but he cut her off. The likes of her. She is an outstanding person once you take the time to really get to know her. You know nothing about this woman. And as far as her being the wife of a Death Eater, well, she's been divorced for quite some time now, so I really don't think that applies. As for you all accepting it, people have Mrs. Weasley, they get used to it. I love her. He wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her into him. And nothing you say is going to change that. Love her. You can't possibly love her. She looked at him hard, like she was trying to determine whether or not he had been cursed or hexed. When she couldn't seem to find anything wrong, she shook her head and turned back to Sissa. Just who do you think you are? One of the Black Sisters. You know you all aren't as great as you think you are. Andromeda is the only one out of the three of you that was worth anything. She drew her wand and pointed it at the blonde. I dueled one sister here. I'm not afraid to do it again. When Molly pulled her wand out, people had started to move. Many away from the area, but surprisingly there were those that were pushing towards them. As the tip of her wand trained on Sis's chest, she was surprised to find the way blocked, first by Harry, willing to take whatever curse it was she was going to throw for his love, then people closed ranks to the sides of them. First Draco and Hermione, together, followed by Andromeda and the Minister. McGonagall and even Fleur moved to stand in the way. Out of the corner of her eye she saw movement, and only lowered her wand when her only daughter stepped to the front of the group. Facing down her mother, and standing between her and those that she rightfully called her friends. "Mother, what are you doing?" Her voice carried easily through the silent hall. "She hasn't done anything wrong. They've fallen in love. What is wrong with that?" Molly's eyes narrowed for a moment. But she wouldn't draw her wand on her own daughter. Her voice was low, threatening even. "Ginevra Molly Weasley, get out of the way." Ginny looked over her shoulder quickly to the people standing behind her and she smiled. A determined look crossed her face when she stood before her mother, and she lifted her chin in a pretty good imitation of Narcissa. "No. What?" Molly was shocked. "How can you stand there next to that woman and let her steal Harry away from you?" "She didn't steal anything. Harry and I haven't been together for a year. And besides that, they are my friends. Harry is like a brother to me, and I have grown fond of Sissa as well. I will stand in front of them, beside them and behind them, now and in the future. They deserve happiness, both of them. If you try and go after her, you are going to have to go through me." Arthur Weasley finally stepped from the crowd and stood just in front of his wife. "Molly, what are you doing? That boy has been like a son to us." "I know that," she snapped as she tried to glare over his shoulder at Narcissa. Only for people to close ranks around both she and Harry, effectively blocking her view. "I don't have any intentions of hurting Harry. In fact, step aside. All of you, I only want Narcissa. You have no right." Harry's voice rang out over the crowd, and with a last squeeze of Sis's hand he pulled away from her and moved through the sea of people towards Molly Weasley. They stepped apart far enough to let him through, and then they closed ranks around his fiancée. "You have no right to call her by her first name. She deserves more respect from you than that." But, no, he didn't want to listen to her excuses. "No, I don't want to hear anything you have to say. You have disrespected the woman I love for too long. I won't stand by and listen to this anymore. She is nothing like her sister, and her ex-husband, and certainly nothing like the image that you have in your mind of her. She is a far better person than that, and if you can't see that, then you are finished here." He turned to Arthur. "Step aside, Mr. Weasley, you have my word that no harm will befall her by my hand." Arthur looked at Harry for a second, and then he stepped out of the way. "Harry, please." Harry put a hand on Arthur's shoulder as he passed by him. He had no intentions of letting any harm come to Molly. He was certain that given the chance, Sissa would win the duel. He knew firsthand that she was an even better fighter than her sister had been, but Molly didn't know that. She had been expecting an easy fight, and Harry wasn't going to put either one of them in harm's way. "Molly, there are many things that I have listened to you about over the years. You and Arthur are the closest things I have to parents, but this is my life, and I will not allow you to dictate who I can and cannot love. That is not your place, it's not anyone's place." He looked over his shoulder at Sissa, and he failed to see Molly attempt once more to raise her wand. Expelliarmus. Molly's wand flew from her and landed in Sissa's outstretched hand. Harry looked behind him and smiled at her before turning back to the woman he had once considered like a mother. "Mrs. Weasley, what exactly is your problem with Narcissa? That woman is evil, and not to mention the fact that she's old enough to be your mother. What the hell are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that I love her, and that I intend on spending the rest of my life with her." She started to protest again, but he held up his hand to stop her. "Despite whatever you intend on saying next, I am not going to change my mind. In fact," he turned and looked over his shoulder and smiled at her. He moved so that he was standing next to her again. He took her hand and gave it a gently squeeze. "I have an idea." When he spoke again, a few people gasped, but those closest to them only smiled. "McGonagall." "Yes, Harry. Would you do me a favor?" She smiled. "I suppose, what would you have me do?" He turned back to the blonde at his side, but he continued speaking to the older witch. "This beautiful woman has already agreed to be my wife, He pulled her left hand up so that her ring caught the light. And she's planning a wedding, but I have a better idea. He finally turned his head to look at Narcissa. Will you marry me now? Her icy, blue eyes went wide for a split second and her megawatt smile broke across her face. Of course. Then Minerva, he turned to the headmistress, will you marry us? She smiled at the couple standing in the middle of the great hall and with a flourish of her wand things began to change. Narcissa's emerald silk, figure-hugging dress became a loose, cream gown. Her shirt trailed gently over the tops of her shoes and glittered with the sense of all of the diamonds that she had worn previously. Harry's dark dress robes became an elegant black tuxedo, and pretty, yellow daffodils seemed to replace all of the flowers that had been laid out for the ball. Harry looked Narcissa up and down and smiled. You're gorgeous. And you're devilishly handsome in a tuxedo, my love. She took his hand and turned back to Minerva. I think we're ready. Minerva nodded. We will need people to serve as witnesses. Ms. Black. Sissa turned and looked over her shoulder. Draco. Andy. Would you stand up with me? They both nodded and took their places to either side of her. Lord Potter. Harry turned and looked behind him. He was pleased to see both Hermione and Ginny step forward. He has witnesses, Professor. Hermione smiled at him again. Y kissed his cheek before he turned back around to Narcissa. Zrs one more zing. Fleur stepped forward with a large bouquet of daffodils and held them out to Narcissa. I think that every bride should avenue a bouquet. Sissa leaned forward and lightly kissed the French woman's cheek. Thank you, Fleur. Of course. Now go get married. The older woman pulled back and she twisted back around to face her fiancé. Are you ready? Oh yeah. Let's do this thing. He turned to McGonagall. Whenever you are ready, headmistress, I would like to take this woman as my wife. Of course. She raised her eyes so that it carried gracefully across the hall. Her eyes paused only for a second on Molly Weasley, who was standing between her husband and her eldest son. Both of who were smiling at the couple, even if she was not. She finished scanning the room and then smiled at the pair standing before her. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today, after a minor change in plans for the evening. Some mild laughter broke out throughout the hall before she went on, to celebrate the union of two faithful souls. Before I begin this ceremony, I think it is only right to acknowledge all of those that we have lost. Especially in remembrance of what has happened here in recent years. We feel their presence with us tonight, and take great joy in the knowledge that they would be thrilled to see these two wed. Tonight Harry and Narcissa make the ultimate commitment to each other, a commitment that is the greatest expression of love. They are committing to each other's hearts, to sharing all of life's wonderful moments. And to helping make each other's dreams come true. Once you find someone you are willing to love like that, you do everything you can to hold on to that person. Narcissa's eyes were already swimming with tears. And Harry was smiling so grandly that it was almost blinding. Wedding rings are a symbol of commitment and love. The rings are circular, like their love, with no beginning and no end. They represent what has been and what will always be. They are solid, and made to survive the long years of handholding, dueling, toddler bathing, cradle rocking, hand-to-hand combat training. Tender caresses and whatever else life throws their way. Couples wear their wedding bands every day as a symbol of their love. Who has the rings? For a moment Harry panicked. The rings were on his dresser at home. No one had expected them to get married tonight. I do. Ron's voice cut through his panic. I went and got them while you were transfiguring the hall. He smiled as he handed them the rings. I thought you might need them. Thank you, Ronald. She turned and handed Hermione her bouquet. Her smile was genuine and Ron kissed her cheek lightly before stepping back into the crowd. Of course, Narcissa. Harry, McGonagall drew the attention back to the actual ceremony. You will go first. Place Narcissa's ring on the tip of her finger and repeat after me. Narcissa. Narcissa. I love you. I love you. Quote. My heart is in this ring, my love is in this ring. Harry repeated the words without taking his eyes off of his bride. I give you this ring as a symbol of my love. Sissa was lost in listening to him speak. As a symbol, I promise to be your faithful husband, to love you when the sun shines and when the rain falls. In sickness and in health, when you look at this ring. Think of me and remember that I love you always. Remember that I love you always. He slid the ring the rest of the way up her finger and it fit perfectly against the engagement band that was already there. Narcissa. It's your turn. Repeat after me. That's okay, Minerva, I know them by heart. She slid Harry's ring part of the way up his finger and then looked up into his eyes. Thank you for my beautiful ring. I love you too. My heart is in this ring. My love is in this ring. I give you this ring as a symbol of my love. I promise to be your faithful wife, to love you when the sun shines and when the rain falls. In sickness and in health. When you look at this ring, think of me and remember, she slid the ring into its final place on his hand, that I love you always. They both turned to look up at McGonagall, and even her eyes were glistening at what was happening in front of her. She raised her wand towards their joined hands and 2 jets of silver and gold shot from the tip to wrap around them. Then without further ado, it is my honor to declare you bonded for life. You may kiss your bride. She stepped back from the couple as Harry swept Narcissa into his arms. When they broke apart, Sissa took her flowers back from Hermione and nodded to Minerva. It is my pleasure to introduce to you all, Lord and Lady Potter Black. Applause broke out throughout the hall. But Narcissa's eyes landed on Molly Weasley. When she finally extracted herself from Harry's grasp, she made her way over to the woman. She held out her wand to her, handle first. I believe that this is yours. Molly took her wand from the blonde witch, but still didn't say anything. I really do love him, Molly, and I'm sorry that you can't see that, but I'm not going anywhere. He is my husband, and I will do everything. I mean everything, in my power to protect him, and the rest of our family. If you ever raise your wand to threaten me, or anyone I care about again, I will not show the restraint that I showed earlier this evening. Have I made myself clear? Molly nodded silently. That's not an answer. Yes, Mrs. Potter. Narcissa smiled and left the red-headed woman standing there without another word. That's it for today, I will stop here. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you please consider subscribe and make sure to hit that like button, share with your friends, and don't forget to check out my Patreon. Details in description.